Good evening, Mia.
Hey, good evening, Suki. Good evening, Miss Moses. Good
Good
evening.
evening, Pat.
Hey.
Good evening. Is it Mr. Zhang?
Yes, good evening. Please, no mister, just Zhang, please.
Okay.
Good evening, group.
Um,
Good evening. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things with you. Do I have the ability to mute people, to keep them on mute until I call on them?
Yes, I've given you co-host privileges, so you should have
Okay.
the option to mute all at any given time.
Okay. Where is that? Help me out
It
here.
should be at the very bottom of the participants listing.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Um, so we're admitting Celeste. And yes, I see the mute all button. Okay, so just so everybody knows, you're going to be on mute until I unmute you. Good evening, Nikolai. Good evening, Rod. Good evening, Cheryl. I'm just letting everybody know that you're all going to be on mute until I call on you.
Thank you.
Good evening, John. Good evening, Nicola. Okay, so we're going to wait a couple more minutes for the other committee members.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Tara. Good
Oh,
evening.
hi. I'm just here. Good to see everyone.
I've just let everybody know that I'm going to keep you all on mute until I call on you.
Okay.
Okay, I think we should get started so we can get through our agenda for this evening. I see we have a pretty decent turnout as usual. And so Mia, I'm going to ask for your help keeping time when people make comments. I think 3 minutes is safe. It's not a crazy number of people yet. Okay, so I'm going to waive the reading of the rules of order, except to say, please be courteous to each other. Be mindful of how you address your fellow CB9 residents, that we don't say anything that might be construed as defamatory or threatening, because we want this to be a safe space where everybody can express their opinions, even if we have strong opinions and we disagree with each other. Everybody's welcome to express their opinions. Okay, so the next order of business, we need to choose a vice president. I'm going to wait with that until we have the rest of our committee members with us. As far as secretary, Mia did a fantastic job last time. Thank you, Mia. So I am inclined to ask her to beg her to continue with that, unless we have a large enough group of people who are willing to rotate that job. That was something that was suggested that we could do. We're going to have 9 meetings, I think, throughout the year. So if we have at least 4 people who are willing to share in that, 4 committee members who are willing to share in that, we can rotate. Otherwise, I think we should ask Mia to do it because she did a very professional job, I thought. So does anybody want to put up their hand for this? I know it's not the most fun thing, but going once, going twice, secretary. Okay, Mia, it's all yours. Okay, so
Thank you.
Next order of business, we're going to have committee member updates and old business. Okay, so let's see. So far, we only have Pat, Nicola, and John Wolfling with us. I do not have any updates for you. I just heard from Dante that CM Hudson's office regarding the land use framework that was proposed by CM Hudson, and they held some workshops with Hester Street last year. We talked about this at the end of last year. Dante has said that he has not heard anything new from them yet, although they had promised to release the results of the surveys publicly, but he's expecting it soon, and he'll let us know as soon as he hears anything. I don't know if those of you who are in Crown Heights have heard anything. Anybody? Okay, so do any other committee members have any other updates?
Suki, would now be an appropriate time for me to have a follow-up to our first meeting where we all explained our backgrounds and potential conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Okay. At our last meeting, we were asked to share our backgrounds, and I shared with everyone that I'm an architect. I do affordable housing. I have for-profit and not-for-profit clients. I have created a document that identifies in writing all of my clients, for-profit, not-for-profit clients, all of my projects that I've completed in CB9, any potential projects that I have going on in CB9, and any actions I have in front of city planning and which community boards they're in. I've provided that to the executive committee. Suki, I don't know if you want to share that file now. I'd like to have it entered into the minutes so that it could be shared with this group and potentially the entire.
I think you should read the contents, John.
Okay, well, it's a lot. It's 3 pages. Basically, I'm an architect. I've been doing affordable housing and other mixed-use projects in the city for my entire professional career. I am also a resident of the community. I've been here for 24 years. My firm is Datner Architects. We are a firm that's grounded in civic architecture. Some of you have checked out my work and my firm's work, and I appreciate you doing that. I think that's very much appreciated that you judge me on my merits and my work and my firm's work, and not what I really think was a mischaracterization of me in the last general meeting. I'm just going to leave that as said. So as I said, I've got a series of affordable market rate clients and not-for-profit clients. I'm just going to list them off quickly. Acacia Network, Canva Housing Ventures, Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, Dominican Sisters of Socrates, ICL, Mid-Bronx Desperados, Mutual Housing Association of New York, National Development Corporation, Phipps Houses, and POA, which is Preservation of Affordable Housing. I also have for-profit clients, Douglaston, who's doing the vital Brooklyn site that's at Kingsborough Psychiatric, Fish Plate Development, MDG Design and Construction, Monadnock Development, Gilbane Development, Hudson Companies, which you know for their fresh project that they're doing in our community board, JCal Development, L&M Development, Shorewood Real Estate Group, Bushburg Properties, and Penrose. I am also a member of NISAFA and the Campaign Against Hunger, and I'm a member of the American Institute of Architects, and I'm on the New York City chapter housing committee.
John, can you finish up your comment, please?
Yeah, sure. I think what's really important is what I will do if I have a potential conflict of interest. If I have a project that is in CB9, I will notify this board and I will recuse myself from any votes associated with that. I am available to consult on the project if you have questions for me. So that's if it's a project of mine. If it's a project of my firm's, I will do the same thing. If it's a project for a client that I have, I will recuse myself from that vote as well, but I will offer my expertise to the board to advise on it. Same thing for any other clients that are that my firm has or any of my other partners have. So that's basically it. I'm trying to share with you that I am here as a resource. I'm trying to disclose to you my personal affiliations and my professional affiliations so that there is no doubt about where I stand. And please, if you're going to judge me on my merits. Don't take somebody else's word for it. Do the research. Some of you have done that. I appreciate that. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Suki.
Okay. So committee updates. Esteban, now that you're here, I wanted to ask you if you have any updates to give us on what's going on in Crown Heights. If Councilmember Hudson has said anything about her land use framework, because they promised they were going to release the results publicly over the summer. Number one. And number two, do you want to give us any updates on the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan? What's going on there?
Sure. Hi, folks. Esteban. So as far as Councilmember Hudson, she just came off of family leave. So like literally just today. So she's been doing that for 3 months. So there hasn't really been any follow-up as of right now on the district-wide stuff that we sort of got at the last minute. But as far as the Atlantic Avenue plan, city planning has put out their framework, which nobody's super happy about. It was after like a year of engagement, they came back with essentially like MIH option 3, like basically instead of the what they had essentially promised, which was something more like what's been done in Gowanus, which still to me isn't great, but like it was supposed to be better. So so folks aren't really happy about that. There's still a ton of spot rezonings that are popping up in the area, but I do think that we need to stay engaged on this rezoning, because there's materials online, the culmination of a year of engagement, and it's interesting. I mean, I think it's a good indication of what happens when a community allows DCP to just do their own thing. Even when you say that, they spent 10 years working on the M Crown plan, which included like manufacturing and like light manufacturing and affordable housing, and they stuck with their guns for a decade. A new administration came in, everyone was excited about the potential, and then we end up basically with the same thing. Like they didn't put the manufacturing uses in. The affordable housing components are not great. So so I think it's just a good indication of what happens when you approach DCP in good faith, and you still end up, I mean, like I've not seen anyone in the city engaged at this level that Community Board 8 has been on this particular thing, and it ended up being the same. So
Esteban, how many units of housing are they expecting out of this rezoning?
I don't. Yeah, I can look it up. I can tell you in just a little bit. But it's a lot.
I feel
and basically what's happening right now is this would go all the way over to Nostrand on Atlantic.
okay.
And they had already approached Councilmember Osei about expanding that to basically go all the way up to Utica. So what you're looking at is from Barclay Center to Utica, like the same height of building and the same density, all across.
I'm sorry,
on mute?
Esteban, I accidentally muted you.
That's okay. I said I'll look up the numbers and I can tell you in just a second what the number of units is.
Okay, that'd be great, because it definitely plays into what we're gonna talk about next. Okay, so then the next thing I wanted to talk about was our goals for the year. This is something that every committee needs to do. And what I was hearing loud and clear, both from members of the public and committee members at our first ULURP meeting of the year, is that we'd like to see, people are frustrated with the development that's happening, that they haven't had a say on before it happens, and that they would like to see more consideration of the environmental impacts, particularly the cumulative environmental impacts of development in the district that's happened already, as well as development that is planned or proposed. So as you know, the city and the state environmental quality review is not as comprehensive as we would like it to be. It doesn't cover as of right development, of which we've had a lot, and it doesn't necessarily look at cumulative impacts in the way that we would want it to. So if this is something that is important for our district and our committee to understand, we're going to have to do it ourselves. And I think the first step in doing that is to review the development that's happened and review the existing baseline conditions in our district in terms of, what our zoning and land use is, and also just basic demographic information that is going to come up on every ULURP application anyway. Things like income, affordability, what type of housing we have, etc. So I'm going to kick things off by looking at a map of the district with, what kind of development has happened. Okay.
I think Esteban was trying to get your attention.
Yeah, it's 4,000 units, projected anyway, for the Atlantic Avenue rezoning. And I can send Mia, if I send you some links, could you send those out so that people can see the process and everything that they came out of with? So yeah. Vicky, you're muted.
Okay, so can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So, so this is basically a map of the developments that have occurred in our district since from 2010 till the present, basically the end of 2022. And I got all of this basically from the New York City housing database. This is all open data. And so you can see basically that there's been an enormous amount of development in the district. Some of them are large, some of them are small. Like this one here, these three buildings, which I think John Wolfling probably knows. This is 500 units. You know, some of these here,
and they're all affordable. They're all affordable apartments. They're for Canva Gardens or Canva Housing Ventures. So yes, I'm very familiar with those. I didn't do all three buildings. I did one of the buildings.
gotcha. Okay, thank you. And these smaller developments here, some of them are quite small. Some of them are 6 units, 8 units, 20 units. But they have an impact on the people on those blocks and on, you know, the people who are living next to them. Some of these are very big, you know, some of these like here, this is 140 units. This one here, this one's near me. This is 254 units. Some of them are commercial developments here on Empire Boulevard. There's been some manufacturing developments in our manufacturing district here. Where there isn't developments is here and here. Those are the single family zoning districts, the R2, R4, and R5, 1, 2, and 3 family. I'm gonna ask John to do discuss the zone, explain the zoning districts later, and you'll see exactly why that's the case, why certain zoning districts don't have development and other zoning districts. These are the R7 districts, R6 districts, R6 districts, why other districts have a lot of development. Just outside the boundaries here are in black, and just outside the boundaries, you can see adjacent districts. For example, this is 17, this is 14. Up here, this is 8. You know, I'm just sort of showing the edges of these districts, but you can see there's been a lot of development in the adjoining districts as well. And it's worth being aware of that because it affects our perception of how much development is happening, because our communities, you know, aren't necessarily always divided by community district lines. You know, we may consider ourselves to be part of the same community if we live near the boundaries of our district. So in point of fact, at this point, you know, Esteban has talked about some of the additional development that's planned for Community Board 8. He said 4,000 units. And so I'm going to talk, unless there's maybe somebody else who wants to talk about it, I'll talk about what's going on in Community Board 17. Jay Sorid, who attends Community Board 17 meetings, was kind enough to let me know that they also have a planned rezoning. They're looking at upzoning Rogers Avenue, New York Avenue, Utica Avenue, and a section of Remsen Village. And they're projecting an additional 4,000 units of housing as well. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. And in terms of, okay, so at this point, I'm going to stop and ask if any first committee members and then members of the public have any comments or questions. Please use the raise hand function so I can see if you. Okay, Rod, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so my question is, with all of these projects that are going on within the different community boards, is any of the information shared with utilities, right? Because many of these utilities, they have load forecast programs such as Con Edison for the electric, National Grid for their gas system, and so forth. And these, they project the load for a 10-year time frame. Are we sharing this information with them?
I think that's a great,
Especially where the load pockets are.
I think that's a great question. And actually what I was going to do after we do our review of district conditions is talk about district needs. And that would be a great thing to put on our list. So thank you for your comment, Rod. Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions, comments about this data? Okay, so I'm gonna then move on to asking
Oh,
John.
sorry, very quickly, Suki, I see
Yes.
Mr. Herbert again, Mr. Wolfling, and Nicola.
Okay, so we'll take Nicola first, then John, and then Rod.
Just to confirm, this map includes only the existing new development, correct?
Yes, this
Projects
includes
that have been
developments.
completed or permitted.
Yes, this includes developments that have been completed already. And then actually Nicola is also going to do a short presentation from the city's Equitable Development Data Explorer. And I think that you have some data on the total number of units. But it does not include things that are currently under consideration, like Franklin Avenue or the Vital Brooklyn developments or the I don't think it even includes 975 Nostrand.
So are we going to discuss those or no?
So yes,
Okay.
we are gonna talk about that. How many units is part of that? John Wolfling. Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, great. So as you noted, some of these are small, some of them are big. There's actually a great resource that is available. I could post the link in the chat. I'm assuming that we can chat. And it's actually something that, Tara, you asked a question in a city planning presentation about their new City of Yes proposal. And the response was, where you asked, where is all this housing being added? And the resource that was made available is this great database, which probably is pulling from the same information. Suki, I don't know if I can share my screen or not, but maybe you could pull up the website.
Actually, yeah, actually I can,
If you can grant
I'm
me
mousing
privileges.
over it right now. I have them here, right?
Right,
So,
but I think what's really helpful, this database that I'm referring to, it aggregates all the information, units gained, units lost, demo, renovation.
Oh, that we're going to talk about that, John. We're
Okay,
going to talk
okay.
about that.
But it also, it like
But
ranks
just for
every,
now, go ahead. Yeah.
it ranks every community board by how many units they have lost, gained, contributed to the housing stock. It's a really good resource to look through. It gives you a great overview. So that's, I think that's my one contribution to this discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do agree that in addition to looking at our own district, it's helpful to get a sense of where we are compared with other community districts when we start talking about what the city's needs are and what the city wants from us. Okay, so who did we say next? Rod? Rod? Can we unmute Rod?
All right, no, so my hand was up by mistake. I'm
Okay,
good.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, so Tara?
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that maps that John brought up when I was in that meeting is I did look at the map, and the issue with the map was that and I went to another meeting to discuss this as well, is that the data was incorrect. It said that on that map that we have the lowest amount of development coming to our area possible, the lowest amount of units here, which is absolutely not true. So I really question that data, and nobody could tell me otherwise. I went to two meetings to try and figure it out. So I don't know if you could shed some light there, but it said we have the lowest amount possible. And with the colors on the map, you know, we were in the zone of no creation of units at all.
Okay, so yeah, so this map, and you can mouse over each one and it'll show you how many units and when it was built. So this is the one near me, 626 Flatbush, 254 units built 2016. This is up at Lincoln Road, 90 units plus another 51 units built 2017. 211 Crown Street, 165 units, 2017. 1089 President Street, 60 units, 2021.
I can map. You don't need to go over it, but you know,
yeah.
it's not
so I'm gonna drop.
You know, that's not what was indicated. It indicated we had the lowest no development.
No, was this at the city planning meeting or was this at the
Yeah.
borough president's?
So I'm looking at the database right now, and maybe there's a lot of options, a lot of filtering options, but if you select all, it tracks from 10 to 2022. It doesn't have like this year's data, but it does show Brooklyn Community Board 9. It shows that I think we've gained 3,600 units, which is kind of in the middle of all the community boards. There's some community boards in the Bronx that have really like gone gangbusters, but it's not zero. We're kind of in the middle.
Yeah, that's I think my conclusion as well. And I think it's also important, you know, like I said, to look at what's going on around us, because I think that can affect our perception of development. I mean, if you live like right here or like right here, you're looking at between CB9 and CB14 and CB17, you're looking at an enormous amount of development, right? You know, or maybe if you live right here, you're looking at an enormous amount of development between 9 and 8. But yes. So I can drop my map in the chat as well.
There's no more chat.
Oh, okay. So I'll send it out. I'll send it out by email to Mia later, and for the non-board members as well. Hold on. No, I think we do have chat actually.
I don't. I was kicked out and chat was taken away from me.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
It is a chat.
There's no chat.
So, you know what, I'll ask Mia to send it out to people later. And if you, you should email the district office if you want a copy, if you're not a board member, email the district office. Okay, so we got to move on. If I can ask John Wolfling to talk about the zoning in our district. And I would recommend that you use Zola because the colors are nice and it's clear. But it's up to you.
Why don't I show both? I think I found the zoning map is very useful, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just something I'm used to seeing, and I can absorb it. I can't share my screen.
Okay, Mia, can John share?
He should be able to do so now.
Okay, thank you. And John, if you could,
Yep.
If you could start by just, very, very high level, talk about the difference between the R zones, the C zones, the M zones,
Sure.
And then explain the concept of floor area ratio before we start talking about the zoning, just specific zoning districts in CB9.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe just as a way to illustrate the differences, there's a few manufacturing districts, M districts, which allow very limited uses that are really about manufacturing. They're not appropriate for residential. You can do commercial in manufacturing districts, but it's really not a place where you would do manufacturing. You might see a hotel show up in a manufacturing district. That's a permitted use, but we have a few manufacturing districts at the edge, at the south edge of our community board. Obviously, this orange highlight that I've put here is the community board. I've identified a few landmarks that I think are relevant for our discussion. But you can see the majority of the district is these R zones, which are residential zones. And the higher numbers are a rough proxy for greater density, greater FAR, which stands for floor area ratio. And I know some of you are very familiar with this, but in the spirit of sharing as much information as possible, as briefly as possible.
Wait, John, can you talk about the commercial districts first?
Sure.
What
Yeah,
are C
certainly.
districts?
Okay. Yeah. So there's also these hatches that you see on here. These are commercial overlays, and I can't answer why there's commercial overlays and why there's commercial districts, but we have a few commercial districts that bridge over the edge here. This is a C43, which is primarily like a more permissive amount of commercial that could be located in that area. This might be a gas station or a laundry facility or a dry cleaner or something like that. That's a little more intensive and a little less kind of residential friendly. But going back to the idea of the overlays, these overlays that you see along these major north-south thoroughfares through our neighborhood are overlays, and they allow limited numbers or limited types of commercial uses like delis, smaller stores. They probably even permit grocery stores, as we've seen in our district. So that's kind of like the big picture: commercial, manufacturing, and residential. Suki, did I miss anything?
Would it be safe to say that the C districts are basically ground floor retail?
The commercial overlays are currently
commercial overlays.
Yeah, they're really ground floor with very limited uses for what can be on the second floor. The second floor uses are probably more like community facilities. In the commercial districts, like the C43 that's up here, that one is much more permissive for what can be above the ground floor. But as you can see, we don't.
C8. Talk about the C8.
Where is the C8?
Right here.
Oh, here, right here.
Yes.
Yeah, so that one is probably also much more permissive.
Here, and here.
I'm not sure where you're pointing. I'm not sure. I can't see
From
your cursor.
Here over to here. This triangle over to here.
Empire Boulevard.
By
Yeah.
West, Pointing over by the corner of the park, near the Botanic Garden, where the Subway and
So
Wendy's.
in this zone here?
No, further down by
Sorry.
Empire Boulevard.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Empire
Yeah,
Boulevard.
right here. Yeah, so there's the
Mhm.
Western Beef is right here.
Right,
There's the C82 that continues through here through Empire Boulevard, and then it transitions to an R7 with all
Right.
of these commercial overlays. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So these maps are sometimes hard to read, as you can see. But I do find it very helpful to kind of see in the bold numbers, in the bold letters, what is commercial district, what's residential district. On Zola, it's a little bit more muddied. I think it's a little bit harder to kind of see this. I mean, you can see the subways very boldly. I could toggle off the tax lots. This is a really helpful interface, but I think, I don't know. Do people find the
John, I'm asking you to unmute. Sorry. Yeah, I
okay.
just needed to mute the others.
Oh, okay. I don't know, was there a consensus on whether this was a clearer diagram to look at, or was it better to look at Zola?
I'm okay with this, you know.
Okay.
Zola's helpful as an interactive tool for anyone who
exactly.
wants to, you know, explore
Yep.
more on their own.
Yep. So let me delve a little bit more into the residential district differences. So as Suki pointed out, there's some lower, sorry, go ahead.
So what's FAR? Just
Okay,
talk about
so
what
I
that
was going to
means.
illustrate the FAR through the
Yeah.
discussion of it, but okay, so FAR is a floor area ratio. And it is a, you know, a little bit of a, you know, I don't know, zoning concept that's it's a fundamental thing to zoning. So in some districts, like an R6, along a wide street, and there's, for an R6, there's differences between a wide street and narrow street. There are different FARs, and the FAR can be anywhere from 3.0 down to a 2.0. And that FAR, floor area ratio, is a ratio of the lot size to how much you can build on it. So let's say you've got a 10,000 square foot lot and an FAR of 3, you can build 3 times 10,000, 30,000 square feet. Now, whether you can fit all that floor area onto that R6 parcel is a good question. That's why I have a job, because I can figure out those things. Other people can as well, but it's kind of a complex thing about efficiency and height limits and where you need to have setbacks and rear yards. But I think there's also an important aspect to our neighborhood. There's a lot of R6s, R7-1, R4, R5. There's a few districts that have a letter designation after the R, whatever, the R number. This means it's contextual, or a quality housing approach, or quality housing zoning is required. In these R6 districts without a letter designation, you can do something called height factor, which is a really complicated zoning approach, which allows you to do these towers in the park. If you bring the building back from the street line, you can go much taller, and you can use all the floor area. You've got to have certain amounts of open space. So there are these urban planning terms called towers in the park. Those are really a result of height factor zoning, where you don't have this letter designation or a contextual zoning requirement. When you do have a contextual zoning requirement, it means the building has to be basically placed on the street, and you've got height limits. So I think from an urban planning perspective, and from the context of our neighborhood, I think if we wanted to push for something that would be more appropriate for our neighborhood, that contextual zoning, those letter designations would be more appropriate. Now, I'm gonna disclose something to you in the spirit of what I shared with you at the beginning.
John,
Yes.
John, we gotta wrap this up.
Okay,
So
okay.
can you just take us through each of the zoning districts and you know, talk about, you know, tell us what the FAR is, because basically I think what you're trying to say is the the floor area ratio controls how much you can build.
Exactly.
So tell us for each of the zoning districts what the FAR is
So
and
if
what the other restrictions are, like, you know, the number of units that can be built, because some districts are quite restricted.
those, you know, that is information that I think is way too detailed for this conversation. We can have a follow-up, but I will say, I'll summarize by saying the R2s are relatively low density districts. It's like a 1.0, 1.5, maybe even a 0.5. Actually,
It's a
I think it's a
0.5.
0.5. Yeah. So maybe you should be doing this part, Suki. But the R7-1, depending on whether you do height factor or you do somehow you can, you know, maybe do the quality housing, it's more like a 3.45, 3.5. An R8 is a much denser district. An R8A, you can do, I believe it's 6.02 FAR, so like double the size of an R6. So this is a very dense district right here, kind of in the middle of what is much lower density. Here's an R8X. An R8X is also a high density district, 7.2 FAR with a lot of height flexibility. So you could use all that floor area. That's one of the things that goes together with these lower density districts is greater permissiveness for the height. And really that FAR and the height is what really gets you to the number of units that you can do. Although in some of these lower density districts like R1 and R2, they're really meant to be single family or two family homes. So they're kind of like depressed. Sometimes you hear the term exclusionary zoning. The R1 and R2s are really examples of exclusionary zoning where they exclude a lot of
Well,
denser
okay, let's not editorialize now. Let's
no,
just
I'm
say
just, these are
single
facts. These are
family.
facts. Yep, single family. Yep.
Okay, and R4 is what?
Is kind of like it's still a very low density district. Anything R5 or less is really low density, and R5 can do up to 1.95 FAR, again, floor area ratio of heirs, which is affordable independent residence for seniors.
Okay, but
Currently,
R5, what is the R5 base FAR?
I think it's 1.25.
Okay,
It can,
and the
I think it can go,
R4?
I don't know what the R4 is. I don't actually do a lot of work in R4. I do higher density districts.
I think it's around 1.0 or 1.25, but
Okay.
we'll check up on that and get
Okay.
back to you guys. But the other thing is, like, how many families is R4 and how many families is R5? Like, how many units can you do in an R4 or R5?
You know, I'm really not sure. That's not something, as I said, I don't typically do the lower density districts. In an R5, you can still do multifamily. You can do more than single family, more than two family, but there's really height limits.
Can you do more than 3 family in an R5?
Yeah. And these buildings can be
Okay.
up to 45 feet tall. But they do have to respect setbacks at the property line. So they're relatively low density, I mean, this is our neighborhood is very much R5, R6, except for these lower density areas over here. So actually, you know, the vast majority of our neighborhood is this R6.
Okay, and
R6.
so tell us, yeah, since the R6 is a lot of our neighborhood, tell
Yep.
us what is the base zoning for R6 and what are the exceptions? The base
So-
FAR.
Okay, so the base FAR, and it really, you know, I could get way into the weeds on this, and I'm going to focus on quality housing for now, which is leaving out a whole picture of this. There's the height factor calculations, which actually have a sliding FAR. You can go anywhere from, I think, 2.0 up to 2.43 for height factor, but it's really a function of how much open space you have, how tall the buildings are. So it's a very complicated way of thinking about zoning, but for quality housing, you can elect to do quality housing in an R6 district. You can say, we're going to do a quality housing building. We're going to play by the quality housing rules and have that permitted FAR that can go from 2.2, or actually, yeah, I think it's 2.2 up to 3.0. And that's really dependent upon whether you're adjacent to a wide street or not.
Like within 100 feet of a wide
Exactly,
street.
within 100 feet of so if you have a lot that is, let's say again, 10,000 square feet, and only the one end of it, let's say half of it is in is within 100 feet of a wide street, that half of the parcel, 5,000 square feet, gets to claim the 3.0 FAR. The other part has to claim the lower FAR of 2.0 or 2.2, depending on the various restrictions on the
Okay.
site.
And
So
quality housing, that's something that developers can elect or not elect,
yes,
right?
that was, and that's actually something I wanted to share with the group, as I said, as a way to fully disclose. Developers often do quality housing because there's a whole host of deductions that they can take that are, and I'll use air quotes, that are quality housing measures. If you have laundry rooms, if you have daylight in corridors, if you do certain energy performance metrics or measures in your building, you can deduct a whole bunch of floor area, and it doesn't count as zoning floor area. So you can basically add more floor area. There's a big delta between the gross square footage and the zoning square footage, because you can deduct half your corridor if it's daylit. If you've got less than a certain number of units on a floor, you can deduct the other half. So there's a lot of deductions that come with the quality housing program. So I earlier advised that we should consider quality housing, but I wanted to share with you that it comes with some repercussions, that more floor area can be built, but it is depressed. There's a height limit to it. So I'm, again, just trying to fully disclose to you the facts about the zoning resolution, the costs, the benefits. Anyway, that's in the spirit of what I'm trying to do here.
No, that's very helpful, John. And so what is the height limit in R6 for quality housing?
It depends on the street width. It's 45 for the maximum base. And at the maximum base, you have to set back a certain distance. And then it can go up to 55 feet. There's something called a qualifying ground floor that actually gives you additional height. At least I think it's 45 and 55. It might be 55 and 65.
So it's basically 55 on a narrow street, and what is it on a wide street?
On a wide street, it can go up, I think, to 70 or 75.
Okay. Okay.
And that 75 is if you have a qualifying ground floor. A qualifying ground floor is something that's 13 feet tall. So if you
Okay.
have a store that wants that greater height, you can increase your building height. And that's just a
So
way.
developers don't always choose quality housing. We've definitely seen towers. So what, that happens too, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
So
just let me add one more thing with MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing. There is additional height that you can take advantage of, an additional floor area. So it's very complicated. I've tried to give an overview. As we get into project specific projects or zoning specific projects, I will of course share with you this knowledge and help guide us through that.
So can we very briefly talk about the M1 and the C82 districts? What's the FAR on those?
So M1 is a very low FAR. I think it's 1.0, but it varies. There's a 1 point, or there's an M11, there's an M12, an M13, and the FAR varies, I think, between those three districts. But I think
We're
it
an
never goes above
M11,
2. I
looks
think
like.
I think it never goes above 2. So it's kind of like a commercial district. These commercial overlays allow up to 2.0 FAR of commercial uses. In my experience, that never gets fully utilized. It's more FAR that gets, you do the ground floor as commercial and the rest of it is residential. You don't maximize that.
And what's the
commercial.
FAR on the C82?
That I'm not sure about. I could, if you want me to, I can follow up with that and let you know. Another wrinkle to all of these commercial districts is that they usually have a residential equivalency. And that is a concept that means that in those commercial districts, and some of them actually don't have a residential equivalency, but many of them do. In that commercial district, you can also do residential, and residential up to a certain FAR that's determined by that residential equivalency. So this C83 that is, gosh, I lost it again. along Empire, or sorry, C82. This has a, I'm sure has a residential, well, maybe it doesn't have a residential equivalency. I'm not quite sure. There's a, sorry,
CH2 doesn't have a residential equivalent. I think we
okay.
all know that by heart.
Okay, so that means that you can't do residential in this district. The C43, I'd be willing to bet it does. It does have a residential equivalency, and it might be an R7A or it might be an R72, something like that. And that means that you can do that R72 or whatever the residential equivalency is. You can do that much floor area of residential in this C43 district.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Sure.
So just to give a very brief summary, we're in our district, we start with R2, which is single family, 0.5 FAR. Then we go to R4, which is 1 and 2 family. I think it's also around a 1 or 1.25 FAR, but we have to check on that, right, John? R5 is a 1.25 FAR. There is a height limit of I think it's 35 feet, although that may be for contextual R5 districts. We have R6, which starts at a base of 2.0, but it can go up to 2.44, as John said, on a narrow street, or 3.0 on a wide street. Then we get to R71, which is a 3.44, does not have height restrictions, but under quality housing, there is a height restriction. It goes up to what's the FAR it goes up to, John? Under quality housing?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think it's probably like 4 or something. And then R8, R8A, you said it goes up to 6.0 FAR.
6.02, yep.
6.02, and that's, how tall is it? 12
That can go up
stories?
12 stories or 125 feet, yep.
Okay. And that, R6A is a 3.0, goes up to 7 stories. And then we have our manufacturing district, which is a 1.0, and our C82, which does not have a residential equivalent. I think it's also a low density district. I want to say 2, but I could be wrong. Okay, so should we take questions? Let me see. We'll start with the committee members, if there's anyone. No, I don't see anyone. Okay, so we'll start with Rod.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I would like to see with all this information that was given, I would like to see basically the entire borough. All right. In other words, how many beds are being added to the entire borough so that we can get a good picture of this entire project. All right. This is the information that the mayor receives because he looks at all 5 boroughs. He has to understand how many beds and what's the construction, all the projects that are going on with regards to, the affordable housing effort. And, what that would do for us, that would allow us to see, which areas are receiving the bulk of these projects. So that's something that I would like to see. I don't believe it's impossible. And I think that the information should be presented at these meetings. Right now, if it's on Zoller, I can take a look at it myself, but I think for the general public, this is something that should be shared. Thank you.
Rod, can you see my screen? Am I still sharing this?
Let's see. Yeah, I switched over. Go ahead.
Okay, so this again, this is a really helpful tool, and I have just kind of scratched the surface on it. I just did a sort. I isolated Brooklyn. I did all years. If you wanted to look at what's happened in the first half of the knots, you could filter by that. You can also filter by demolition, new building. I'm just, for simplicity's sake, showing everything here. So here's all the Brooklyn community boards, and you can see where are we in here? Here, we're kind of, again, kind of in the middle of the housing production. So all this stuff over here is negatives, demolition, and other losses, and all this kind of greenish is new construction. And the hovering over this actually gives you some of the fine grained detail. So it's a really helpful interface. I think it gives you what you're looking for.
So I understand that, and I'm just saying for the masses, as I said at the end of my statement, yeah, I can look at this, if it's on Zola, I can go on, I'm tech savvy, I can take a look at it, but not everybody else is. So I'm just looking to get that information out there to the people so that they can understand the project and how it affects them as well as the entire borough.
Yep.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Rod, thank you. And we will look to get you that information. I actually do have it for the entire city, so I'm happy to share that. If you're a board member, right? I can, yeah, I'll get it to you. So I'm just screen sharing again now. I've added in the new developments that have been fully permitted and or are under construction. So now we can see 975 Nostrand. We can see Franklin Avenue, 54 Crown Street. No, this doesn't make any sense. 902 Franklin is already permitted. We don't know if it's going to happen, but you can see there's quite a bit more. And I agree with you that we should be tracking all of this. We should be tracking all of this for the whole borough and understanding, what that adds up to. We talked about what 17 is doing. We talked about, what board 8 is doing. And, we should be understanding, how that affects us.
Suki, do you think you could explain why isn't this the Franklin Avenue site that's just north of Sullivan? Isn't that the ULURP that we're seeing recently? Why is there a permitted? Why is there yes, further south? It's that triangular site, isn't that it?
So that may have been permitted previously, because I think at one point they did apply to do an as of right. So that tells you what it would be as of right. But in any case, Rod, I can share a map of the borough with the board office. Okay, Nikolai. Nikolai?
Hi, sorry, I just had to unmute myself. I just wanted to share from going over the zoning districts that the R4 is a 0.75 FAR. And then just for people's awareness, the Department of Planning, the New York City Planning has a very easy to understand website that just explains what all the different zoning classifications mean. If anybody wants to do a Google search of that, that's all.
Thank you. I definitely, would urge those of you who are interested to take a look at it. It's actually quite clear. It's in plain English. It talks about all the things you guys care about, like parking requirements and yard requirements and so on. So yes, thank you. Cheryl?
Hi, how are you? Good night, everyone. I just have a few quick questions, if it's okay.
Yes.
Our area now within Wingate, Boys and Girls High, it's presently an R6? Or will it be rezoned to an R6?
John, I think it's presently an R6. Is that right?
Boys and Girls is in an R6, yeah, but there is this is before my time on the community board, but isn't there a proposal to rezone the church that's right near there?
That came before us and they did not come back.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's currently an R6.
Okay, is it going to be rezoned to another?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
There's nothing apart from that 777 Rutland Road, which made a proposal, but they never filed anything with the Department of City Planning. There is not any proposal that I'm aware of to rezone that area.
Okay,
There's another portal called the Zoning Applicant Portal, ZAP, which is very buggy and hard to navigate, but it does tell you where there's active. Yeah, some of you already know about this. Sorry, I'm covering ground that you already know. Sorry.
No, that's great, John. Thank you for mentioning it. Yeah, that's definitely a place that you can check to see by community district what zoning applications have been filed. Renee? Renee?
Yeah, you had to allow me to unmute. Good afternoon, everyone. My question is there was a statement that you made in reference to the width of the street and in reference to height. What do you do when on one side of the property, you have a narrow street, and on the other side of the property, you have a wide street? What holds precedence in that situation?
Very good question. So if you've got a, Suki, should I take this one or do you want to take it?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
John.
Okay, so if you've got a through block site that has frontage on both a wide street and on a narrow street, those narrow street regulations apply to the side of the parcel that faces the narrow street, and the wide street applies to the area that faces the wide street. If you have a corner lot and one of the streets is a wide street, that 100 feet from that corner is where the wide street regulations apply, and then everything beyond that 100 feet is where the narrow street, assuming that the intersecting street is narrow. So if you've got wide and narrow, you've got wide street regulations here, and then narrow beyond that 100 feet. But it's a great question.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jay?
Sure, thank you. How many people here who are on the committee live east of Kingston? I'm just curious. How many people live east of Kingston? Anyone east of Kingston? Okay. So my point and also my question is, in terms of we had this issue at the public session last time. How many more people are we going to put on the committee from the East Flatbush region, the southeast part of the district, to cover so people could start bringing up the Vital Brooklyn projects, which were basically shut out for the past year and a half? How many more people are we going to do? Fred, I don't know if you wanted to talk about that question, or what's our plans for increasing this committee, which is mostly people west of Kingston, when the projects that are happening, the massive developments, is east of Kingston? What are we going to do on that? Fred? Fred, would you like to speak to that issue, or Suki? Suki, you could speak to it. Could you guys hear me?
Yeah, Jay, we can hear you.
Yeah. So what are we doing on like how many more people are we adding? Because it's a major problem. Because, for instance, these maps don't show the massive pending Vital Brooklyn projects.
We haven't actually started talking yet about pending development.
Okay, I'm sorry, Suki. I'll hold off. But the diversity question, should we wait for community concerns on that? Okay, hello, Suki, can you hear me? I think there may be an issue on hearing. Can you hear me, Suki?
Jay, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. So just if we stick to the map, just I would say two comments besides the other one. Can we have on the map, can we show pending developments? Can we have a map that shows pending developments? Can we also have a map that shows supportive housing developments as well? So you can show on the map, okay, this is supportive housing, and then we could show, okay, residential beds analysis, so we could see where they're located and whether we're doing segregating it. Because there's a massive amount, some people are going to say disproportionate amount that's coming to the southeast part.
Suki, you're muted.
Yeah, I think you may be muted, Suki. Suki.
While she's unmuting, I will try to answer part of that, Jay.
Mia, can you unmute me? Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, Jay, I think the answer to your question is that we do have board members from every part of the district. I'm not the one who chooses the board members, but I do believe we have board members from every part of the district. We have had sessions and heard public comments on Vital Brooklyn at our ULURP meetings last year and continuing to do so this year. And we will have an open community comment section at the end of the meeting if there is time, if anybody wants to comment on issues of concern, including Vital Brooklyn. And I think that, I would say that the map shows that there's been development really in almost every corner of the district. And yes, I think that this is one of the major upcoming developments. And we do, as I said, need to talk about the effect of that and what are going to be the cumulative environmental impacts of both past development, of which there's been over 3,000 units throughout the district. I wouldn't say it's primarily in that section, as well as some of these upcoming developments that may be hitting in the next several years. So let's get through this section. Was there anyone else, Mia, who had their, but thank you for your comment. And was there anyone else, Mia, who had their hand raised? Mia? Was there anyone else who had their hand raised? Mia, we can't hear you. Okay. It looks like Cheryl has her hand raised. Can you unmute Cheryl, please?
Hello? Thank you, Suki. I appreciate
Hi,
that.
Cheryl.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, John, for the explanation of everything. So I just have a question. I'm not too sure if I should wait for the next portion. We would like to see a map of the new developments coming up, because my question would be, how many of these new developments have social service, 3 hospitals along within a few blocks of them, schools and commercial businesses? So that's what I would really like to see, the new developments that are coming up that have 3 hospitals and schools and commercial businesses along with it.
Yeah, so I do not have specific information on which developments include social services, but that's definitely something that we can look into as we get to talking about the district needs. I agree that that's something that we should look at. So speaking of which, Nicola, do you want to present the Equitable Development Data Explorer? That's a tool from City Planning that provides some basic information about our district, including housing production and some basic demographic information. And it does it for every community district, so you can compare and see. And it might have something about individuals in DHS shelters. So Nicola, if you could take that up.
Okay.
And
I'm just wondering, in the interest of time, given the fact that it's 8:15, if we start going through this other database, that's going to take us on a whole, if we're talking about AMI bans, et cetera, it might take us in a whole different direction in terms of conversation. So for the purposes of today, maybe we stick to development and what we know about existing and planned development. And then next month we start looking at AMI and income and all that.
show everybody the tool. You know, I don't think we need to have an extensive discussion about it, but we should be talking about basic things like median income and median rent. I think that needs to be out there.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I pulled a few screens from the tool in the interest of time.
Mia, can you let her screen share?
Okay. Let's go. Okay, so as Suki mentioned, this is a, let me get back. This is a database from the Equitable Development Data Explorer. It's basically information that's pulled from HPD, city planning, and open data sources within New York City. And for our purposes, there's a map. You can look at various community boards within the city. This is information specific to CB9. And as you can see, I have to pull this out, move this over here. For CB9, the first area was demographic conditions. And it showed that our population overall between 2010 and 2020, the two census periods, we increased by 3%, 3.1% overall. But when you dig deeper into the data, you see that Black non-Hispanic numbers, we went down by 15,000 people, and 20% of our population, Black and non-Hispanic population, decreased between that 10-year period. Whereas other populations, our white non-Hispanic population is now 63%, non-Asian, non-Hispanic is now increased by 118%. So overall, we've had a 3% increase, but you can definitely see that the makeup of our community has changed significantly over the last few years. All right, so that's one data point. Okay, in terms of the median income for our community, I'm sorry about that. Okay. The median income, it seems to be an increase of $20,000. So years ago, we knew we were in the lower $40,000 range for our community. And it seems as if our numbers have increased to around 65,000. So we've increased by $20,000 overall. Now, again, we're not sure exactly where they're pulling some of the information. If it's purely census information, then we may have some skews based on who actually reported, but that gives us a feel of what's happening, and it may probably be even higher than the 65,000 at this point. In terms of the AMI by band, now the average, what I'm going to do is skip over this one because I have another comparative graph. In terms of housing, occupied units, paying rent. So this is basically saying that in 2018, 2008 to 2012, we had about 33,000 units. Right now, we're at 35,000 units paying rent. And again, Suki and I were looking at this information, trying to determine where are they pulling this from, because the gross average, the median gross rent seemed low to me. Right now, they're saying it's about 15,000 as a median.
1,500.
12,000, 1,500, I'm sorry, compared to 1,200 in 2012. I would tend to think that that's higher in terms of market rates. But what we're thinking is that if this is rent stabilized information, which is probably what HPD has access to, then we may not be seeing the full picture for our community, but at least it gives us a gauge of what's happening in terms of the numbers continuing to go up.
And you just want to quickly show the screens on percentage of rent stabilized housing.
In terms of the AMI bands?
The percentage of rent stabilized housing.
Okay, well, the rent stabilized housing right now is saying that 68% of the community is rent stabilized. 68.7% based on a 2017 figure. Okay. Now, when we looked at, they have information based on describing the affordability of units based on the AMI bands. And that is the figure in the middle here. I'm trying to move this. Now, this is showing that 7%, in terms of the units that are available, 7%, 7.6% of the units would be able to support people in the extremely low AMI category, which is 0 to 30% AMI. The figure to the right, the figure to the right shows basically what our households, where we fall as the income for each of the households in our areas. And 23.8% of our community would fall into the less than 30% AMI income level, but only 7.6% of the housing that's currently available would be able to support them. So again, we're already seeing a deficit. 14.2% of the community has an income that falls between 31 and 50% AMI. Only 18.2% of the housing would be available to support that area. So that level is somewhat syncs up, but the extremely low level, we're definitely at a deficit. And as we go to 80% to 50%, it's at 44% of the housing would meet that category, but only 16.9% of our community falls into this category. So we can already see that the information, the housing that's being developed is not really meeting the needs of our community in terms of the incomes that we currently have within our community. So those were some of the categories that I went through quickly before this meeting to get a sense of. Sean, you have a question?
All right.
Suki, are you having
Controlling.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not able to unmute anybody right now, including myself.
Somebody did just unmute me. First of all, this is really helpful. This is amazing data. I do think what I just did, I did some mental math and I added up the 51 to 80 and everything lower than that. And on both sides of this screen. And it definitely looks like there are some households that are underwater. But if you add up the AMIs, at least if I'm doing the math right, it's about 55% that are 80 and less on the right-hand side. And when you add on the left-hand side, that same 80 and less, you get a number that's a little bit higher. So it seems like the really low, the extremely low income people are just really underwater and spending more than 30% of their income on rent. And that is a problem that we have throughout the city. So not really a question, sorry, just an observation.
Okay, Pat, I think you have a question or comment? Who has the ability to unmute?
Am I muted now? I just wanted to say it seems to be a problem with the muting and unmuting. So I think we all can we can all remain quiet when we're not supposed to speak and just mute ourselves because it seems to be a problem with the muting and unmuting. That's all I wanted to say there.
Well, it looks like I have.
Okay, sorry. I had to join for a while by my phone, so that's why I kind of lost my host privileges. I apologize. Who's next?
I think it's
I
Jay.
actually wanted to say something too about this. I also noted that there was a gap between the number of people who are low income, very low income, like 0 to 30%, which is 30% of AMI right now is $30,000 a year. So we really are talking about very low income. I noted that gap too. And I don't really know if we can get into it that much, but I would love to ask the housing committee to investigate this more. Like, who is it who is below 30% of AMI? You know, are we talking about seniors who are on Social Security or disability? Maybe is it people who actually own their homes, or is it mostly people in you know, rent controlled, rent stabilized apartments, or maybe it's people who live in supportive housing? What goes into that income calculation? I've heard, for example, that social benefit payments like Section 8 are sometimes not counted. So I'd like to get a better understanding of how it is that, you know, what's happening to these low income people. Are they really squeezed, or is there something that we're missing? That's all I wanted to say. And Jay, you have your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me, Suki? Yes, can you hear me?
Jay?
Can you hear? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Mia,
Okay.
can we unmute Jay?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, great. My question is, this seems like a new change. I'd like to know first, who is the host for today? Is the host who's in control of the muting? Is that you, Suki?
Mr. Sword, myself, and the committee chair are co-hosts on the meeting.
Okay. Whose decision was it made? Who made the decision?
Can we
to make-
unmute Jay?
Okay,
Mia?
can you hear me?
Can we
Suki, I
unmute
think you're having
Jay?
a lag. Jay is speaking. I think she's having a tech lag.
Oh, okay.
Okay, my apologies.
Okay, my question is this seems like a new change. And the problem with this muting thing,
I mean, it says here that I've allowed everyone to unmute themselves. Jay, can you unmute yourself?
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me, Suki? Can you hear me?
Mr. Sori, you can proceed.
Okay.
I think Suki's just
We're
having
going to have
a bit of
to
lag in her internet.
come back
Okay.
to Jay.
Suki, Jay's not done yet. Okay, can I make the statement? What I wanted to make is just there's
Okay, Jay, I see something now. Your microphone is moving, but I don't hear you.
Jay, I think you should just proceed. Please go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
obviously she's having a technical issue. You can proceed,
Yeah.
Mr. Sori.
Okay, fine. This may be something with the some sort of like time warp continuum where there's
Okay, are other people able to
space.
speak?
Yes. Tara can speak.
I can speak. We hear Jay.
Okay, okay. So my point is this: the where you have it where people are muted, as Pat was saying.
Brett,
the
are you
problem-
able to speak? I don't know why I'm not able to.
I think Suki is in a different galaxy than me. Okay, so just to say it, I would just hope that we can do where we could mute ourselves.
Okay, I've enabled everyone to unmute themselves,
Okay,
but it's not
that's it.
not working.
Energize, Suki. Energize.
We can
Yes, it is
unmute
working.
ourselves. The regular people can unmute ourselves. We could hear Jay. We can hear him.
Suki, we can hear Mr. Sori. We can hear him speak.
Okay.
Your
Okay,
internet is lagging.
Yuki's on a delayed play, that's all.
Okay, so just to quickly make the statement, I would just make the statement. I hope we could unmute ourselves because my mic was where I couldn't unmute myself, and I wanted to do a quick follow-up. And the follow-up was to the issue of the diversity of this community, of the committee. The committee is not diverse. Everybody on the committee is west of Kingston, which is a very big problem. I went to whitepages.com. I looked up the addresses. I know where people live. I would ask that people take a look at the cross streets. You got to have people who are east of Kingston because that's where Vital Brooklyn is affecting. And people aren't bringing up the subjects of Vital Brooklyn. It's being shut out again. And, you need to have a sufficient amount of people who are from the neighborhood of East Flatbush that's being affected. This is 2 years in a row. And I mean, like the committee should be expanded to 20 people, have more people who could be on it, and there should be at least 25%. And this issue, we're ignoring projects that are going up. And there's, for instance, there's a project 777 Rutland has a DCAS. There's a DCAS action where they want to hear from the community board. And it's been from like 2013. There's a at 777 Rutland Road. There's an active application, you guys referenced that, where they want to know from the community board how the community board feels. And there's massive projects in community, like different cumulative impacts. And we're not talking about all the cumulative impacts that are happening. We're totally ignoring it. So we got to start getting people on the community board, on the committee, who represent that portion. This is happening for over 2 years. Thank you.
Okay. On behalf of the chair, so she's having some issues, but she said for a community comment, we want to keep this to about 15 minutes. Well, I guess probably maybe about 13 at this point, but just to make sure we're able to go through the comments and stay on track. So I'm not sure, Mia, if you're recognizing the people, people for community comment.
Yes, Mr. Sword is the only hand raised. I think Suki is having some real tech difficulties right now. Suki, I think you should exit and come back in to see if you can reconnect your audio because you're lagging.
Okay, but if there's anyone who wishes to speak, please reuse the raise hand function. Mia can recognize you. And please, just in terms of, again, we only have about 10 or 15 minutes. We want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak.
Ms. Moses?
Well, I was going to take over for her just because right now she doesn't have anyone. So if you need me to take over for right now, I can do that because I don't know what's happening with her. So I could take over at this present. So if anybody has a question, feel free to speak. Raise your hand and then I will acknowledge you. And as far as Jay's question, Jay, I'm going to repeat this again. You have been saying the same thing for a year. Just understand that the people on the community board represents every community. It's not just a particular section. And also from the last meeting, I do remember, not our meeting, but the board meeting. I know that the assembly person Cunningham said that if you had any issues that you wanted to discuss as it pertained to vital housing or whatever, to come to that meeting, and they would, and he and his staff would try to explain everything to you and research. Now, that's what I remember from the last board meeting. And I don't know if you attended but I think you should, if you're very concerned about those issues. Okay, so who is next? Is it Cheryl?
Yeah.
Hi, yes, good night. Question, are we gonna go over the proposed developments tonight, or is that gonna be another meeting?
That will probably be the next meeting.
Okay, will we be able to also get the links that were sent and shown today? I sent you an email already,
Sure
Mia.
thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll follow with you. Not a problem, Ms. Bernard.
And just so y'all do know, I don't know, Tara, she may not can get the chat, but I see there's 19 people that responded in the chat, so you might want to.
Yeah, we had an administrative meeting earlier and it was left on in error, so.
Okay.
Let's keep our conversation active in the meeting and not in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. So I was actually there were several of us that were also at the assembly members.
I can't hear you.
You can hear me?
Okay, speak into your mic.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
That's good.
Okay, sorry. So I was at the assembly members meeting, I guess it was last week. And it had some representatives from the vital sites. And I found it really informative, even though it wasn't the town hall that he was talking about, where he's going to really have the full discussion. But I encourage all of us to show up to that. If you've got any questions, there were representatives from Breaking Ground, from Douglaston, from the state.
You can put mine in here, right here.
And they described the program in a way that, I learned a good bit, even though I'm like, a housing expert, I learned something. So I really think we should all show up to that meeting if we can. I know it's a big time commitment, but I think it's really important that we attend.
True, and I hope Jay was there. If not, he needs to show up. Okay, is it Renee?
Ms. Westerville.
Who?
Yes.
Ms. Westerville and then Renee.
Oh, okay.
Renee, sorry.
Well.
Oh, wait, you said there was someone before me.
Well, you're already on now. Go and talk.
I have the same concerns as Jay as far as the diversity of the group. People from this area being on the board. I applied, my wife applied, and I know a few other people applied, and some people got no response. I got the response that at least you acknowledged that I applied.
Okay, who's next? Well, thank you anyway. But I just want to say, I just want to say once again, yeah, I want to say to everyone, we have a community board of over 40 some odd people, and I'm quite sure, Jay, you don't even live in Brooklyn, but I'm quite sure we represent the all parts of Brooklyn. So that's all I wanted to say in that. So I hear you.
My concern would be those that live in the areas that are going to be affected by some of the projects. And I was at Cunningham's last town hall meeting, and I give him credit in that he was very responsive and did take the time to try to answer the questions. He wasn't showing frustration, though he could have, but he took the time. And I look forward to his town hall meeting, and I second the motion that everyone should show up at that.
And you know what? I think you're absolutely correct. And it's just like if you show up and some of the people in the community can't make it, like I couldn't make it, you know, we would ask you to report back sometimes to what you hear, or because it affects everyone. What's happening in a small community is going to affect us, all of us, when we talk about the city of Yes. And this is what this is all going to be about soon. Okay, who's next?
Ms. Westerdahl?
Hi, yeah, it was just with not having chat or able to unmute myself, there were some specific questions I had for John about the various maps, and you know, I would like the links sent to me with those maps and to be able to talk to him or somebody about some specific questions that I have. And the other thing is that I believe that what other residents are concerned about, it isn't the board itself, but it's this committee, that this committee has no, the specific land use ULURP committee has no representation from the district that's going to be affected by Vital Brooklyn. It is in fact, you know, pretty much everybody on the committee is in one small area that's mostly, you know, people in houses. And
Like I said,
there was at least one person from that area on this committee. That's what I think they're saying. There's nobody.
right, and what I'm saying to you is that none of you all really know our addresses and shouldn't know it. But my point is this: the board is going to represent the total community, and your elected officials are going to represent. So it's a cross section of everybody. You know.
What about the maps? Like, how can we talk about the map? There was this.
Ms. Westerdahl?
I'm not going to go there. I have to move on. You can get with
Ms. Moses very quickly.
later.
Ms.
Can I-
Westerdahl, you can send an email to the office and I'll connect you with Mr. Wolfling so that he can give you a detailed response to your question, but we can't do that in real time in a meeting.
Right. So I think Suki is
So
back.
draft your questions up and I'll send them to Mr. Wolfling in the morning. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Suki is back. I think can you hear me, Suki?
Yes, thank you
Okay,
so
you
much.
take
Pat.
over. Go ahead. All right.
Are you sure you don't want to be vice chair?
Listen, you're good.
Okay.
So anyway, let me just take the last few people of this. I think it was one other person? Was it Miss Clark or something that was there? Or
It's Miss Clark and
Miss
Miss
Clark,
Chase.
right?
And Ms.
Right, and then we'll take it back over. Go ahead, Miss Clark.
All right, so I live on Schenectady Avenue between quite a bit. And I want to just say, as a person who lives here and who walks like crazy around this whole borough, that is my MO, walking around the different areas, because that's how I get my fitness in. There is a clear distinction between when you live on one side of the community board or community, that you will see a significant difference. So I'm a person who walks on the west side. I walk all over. So like I have a clear indication of the different changes that will be impacted by Vital Brooklyn. So the act of representation, you have to actually understand what is really going on in each of the different sections of Community Board 9. So to quiet people's concerns about what they have, I've personally been here for about 9 years in this particular area, but I've lived literally all over Brooklyn, quite frankly, the whole damn city. So I just don't appreciate the way you spoke to us, because we all live here. We're here spending our time for an hour and a half trying to hear all the information and share our concerns. Is that not what this is for? Like, I was good with listening to all of this, but that energy, we're here all because we have concerns. And I really, quite frankly, am hot that the tone has changed, because we all live here. We all have concerns. And to make sure we are heard and represented is integral to make sure, because yes, these things and what we've seen, especially in the past 3 years, have been significant. And then you add umpteen projects, it's going to drastically impact over here. And then yes, it will trickle out to everyone else, because I know all the trains, I know the buses, I walk literally all these blocks. So for me, to quiet us, Pats, or I forgot where you're at, but it's not appreciated because
first of all, I'm not going
and
to
that's
argue with you.
and that's all I have.
Second of all, we talked about vital programming,
but everyone is not here all the time. We don't live and breathe. So if we come here and show up, then
hold on a second. Vital programming talked about is a state issue, and we talked about how you had to. This has been over a year.
But some of us just got informed.
Issue, and we talked about how you needed to communicate in terms with, because it's not a city issue. It's not a ULURP issue at this point. That's what I said, and I'm going to continue to say it. So who is next?
Guys, can I just cut in here and say that if you do have concerns about Vital Brooklyn and the project, now is the time to express your concerns about the project, because there's other business we have to move on to, and I can't give people more than 3 minutes. So if you're going to take 3 minutes to talk about, your dissatisfaction with the board, that's 3 minutes. You can't tell us your concerns about the actual Vital Brooklyn project.
Well, Suki, I'm going to sign off after I think the last person, but I do want to say that in terms of the Vital program, that it is at this point not a ULURP issue, and I will continue to say that until it is. And so I understand that people may be frustrated, but you also need to go to your assembly people and your council people, because we are on just an advisory board. And you have it now, Suki. I'm done.
Okay, so Mia, can you call on the? Okay, so I'm gonna call on Celeste.
It's Celeste, and then Mr. Herbert.
And then Mr. Zhang and Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Okay, I can't do this from my phone, Mia. Can you unmute Celeste?
Gotcha. Ms. Chase?
Good evening, everyone. I just had a quick question because I noticed on the Friday's email blast that there's a committee related to City of Yes. And I was not aware that that was a committee. It seemed to be something new. I know we had some discussions about subcommittees during the last board meeting, but I wasn't sure. And then I just heard Pat mention how City of Yes will have some impact into the ULURP process or just our discussions about development. So if anyone can tell me or tell us all what the City of Yes committee is, and how will the committee members be determined?
Yeah, that's I'm about to address that in the next section. But yes, the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity subcommittee meetings will be advertised on the community board's website. You voted for that at the last general board meeting, so that's that's what we were talking about.
But is it a subcommittee or is it a separate?
It's a subcommittee. It's a subcommittee. It's exactly what we voted for at the last general board meeting.
Okay. Well, I think it should be designated as a subcommittee on the
Okay.
email.
I'll look at it and I'll speak to I'll speak to the board office.
So Suki, what she's saying is what I brought up. And what I want to say to whoever I'm talking to, the City of Yes is going to impact everything. It's going to impact housing. It's going to impact what goes on. It's going to impact zoning. It's going to impact the economics committee. So yes, everybody should be aware, because we can chit chat all night, but what's up there now, even if you go online right now, you can go online and go into the City of Yes. And it's very important. It's very important that everyone in the community gets involved with that and at least attend the meetings. Even though they're having a subcommittee, the economic committee has to really be in on it. The housing committee has to be on it. The ULURP committee has to be on it, because it has an impact on every single thing that's getting ready to happen in our community, period. And I just want to say that I'm just giving you a small example. they are trying to take a commercial building and turn it into housing. So the community at this point needs to be involved and just go in and listen to everything that's going on with that. And so they having subcommittees because it's like a whole lot of stuff that has to be, talked about. So it is important.
Thank you for the advertisement, Pat.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to take one more person, and then we do have to get on to the committee business, including committee City of Yes. So Mr. Zhang, you haven't spoken yet.
Good evening, everyone. I hope all is well. Mrs. Pat Moses, I want to specifically direct this to you, respectfully, ma'am. I understand what you're saying and your frustrations as when you claim that this committee right here, this ULURP committee, is not responsible for Vital Brooklyn. But you have to understand the participants in this meeting's current plight. Everywhere we go to, it's like a monkey in the middle type game. Everyone says they're not responsible. One person will say, well, go to ULURP. The other one will say, go to land use. The other would say, go to your assembly member. The other one will say CB9 is responsible, etc. So if the people within this actual meeting who are actually legitimately trying to participate cannot get a clear answer, like, why would you be frustrated when we come to you to try to get some clarity? I mean, again, this is not to attack you. This is not to be argumentative, but I'm just asking you just to please be cognizant that the people want clear answers so we can address the issue. But there is like these people, like phantom people, like no matter who we go to, everyone points the finger at someone else. That's all, man. Like, we're not against you. We're not trying to attack you or
I'm
anything.
going to give you. I'm going to give you one.
No, I have to answer. No,
Pat,
I have to answer what he said. Just give me a second. No, I have to answer him. Let me just say something. I respect what you're saying, but you came in late. With the Vital, when it first came up over a year ago, I had them come in, different parts of it come in and explain. So we wasn't like ignoring it, even though it was a state project, but they did come in and they said what they had to say. And we were just trying to reroute people where they need to be and let them understand that at this point, it was not a zoning, it was not a ULURP issue. So we didn't specifically ignore it. We also had, we had people come in and talk about it.
But Mrs. Moses, respectfully, I never said that you ignored it. I never said anyone ignored it.
Okay,
That's
Zhang,
not...
is there a specific question that you have that you want to express now, or a specific concern
So
that you want?
my specific question is that now you guys are certain that ULURP is not responsible. Who exactly is responsible that we need to go to?
Okay, as far as I know, it's the Empire State Development Corporation. That's a state entity. Because this is state-owned property, they unfortunately have the right to override our local zoning. And that's why we don't have a formal role as a ULURP committee. I think that it is impactful on land use in this district. So I'm willing to hear the concerns in this committee and carry them forward, for what it's worth in our minutes, in our resolutions, whatever, to the elected officials. But I have to actually hear what those concerns are. And we've certainly heard some of them. And I would urge you also to attend the housing committee. They're also discussing this issue. They've heard some of those concerns as well. But yes, to answer your question, it's the New York State, it's the Empire State Development Corporation. And they will be holding a public hearing, which Dante has announced all the past public hearings. So I expect that he will do so as well. So make sure you get on CB9's distribution list. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Can I also respond something? Because You look at
Make
the
it very
elected
quick, Nicola, 30
just
seconds.
just to be fine, when you look at the elected official, it is your assembly person, which would be Brian Cunningham. That's his zone, correct? And so he is the elected official representing the state, as well as our state senator, which I believe would be Zelnor Myrie. I believe that would be his district as well. I don't know, or Kevin Parker.
I'm not positive about
But
Myrie,
whoever's the assembly person
it's
for that,
definitely Cunningham's district, and he
and
held
the
a
state
town hall.
senator, and the state senator.
She's correct. She's correct.
Those would be the two people that would have voting rights and have input, because it's a state issue. So it's not your city council person. It would be your assembly person and your state senator.
Okay, so I have to move on now to the committee business. Can we first take attendance? Mia, could you take attendance?
Sure, give me one moment, Suki.
Thank you.
Rabbi Yaakov Berman. Patricia Moses.
Here.
John Wolfling.
Here.
Nicola Cox.
Here.
Mr. John Craver. Esteban Giron. Tom Thomas.
And Suki Chong is here.
Correct.
Okay, so how many people do we have, Mia?
You have 3 members here. I'm not sure if Esteban is still here. No, I don't believe, I believe Esteban is gone. So it's just yourself, Ms. Moses, Mr. Wolfling, and Nicola.
Okay. So what I wanted to do, actually, because Pat is right that City of Yes is coming up. We've already authorized the City of Yes subcommittee for economic opportunity that will be entering public review soon. But we also need to authorize the City of Yes for housing opportunity, which is the next phase. They have already released an environmental assessment statement. It's a positive declaration, which means there is going to be a major impact citywide, including especially in this district. And there will be a public scoping hearing on October 26th. Dante has sent out the scoping hearing information and materials to the board members. Mia, can you make sure that that's sent out again a week before the hearing? And if there's any other members of the public who are interested, please, contact the board office and make sure that you're on the distribution list. I think it would be great if that was sent out to all the members of the public. So we can't vote on authorizing a subcommittee right now. So we're going to have to bring this to the general board meeting at the end of October, since we have to do that anyway. And the second thing that I had wanted to vote on was to, ask the members to investigate some of the questions that some of you had raised about the effects that all of the development might be having on our district. Rod had raised the issue of utilities and sewers. In the past, people have raised concerns about parking and congestion. We had some questions as we were looking at the Economic Data Explorer about housing, about income levels, about the amount of affordable housing that's available. And I think that we need to ask city agencies for more information so that we can start to evaluate what the effects are on this district. So we can't vote on that necessarily, but do any of the committee members who are present, are you willing to work on that? We can also reach out to other chairs, to housing, to transportation, to environment, to see if there are other members who might be willing to work on that with us. So is there anyone who's interested in working on these questions? Don't all put up your hands at once.
I have my hand up. And the only thing I wanted to say is that there is a reason that we have chairs of each committee. And I think that if you deal with housing, if we want to refer something to housing, we should. I think if we're dealing with economics, we should refer to economics. I think if we dealing with transportation in terms of parking, they can pick it up and they can bring answers to us. And I think that we need to just kind of like refer it to where it belongs. And then all of the community people that really have issues about it really need to attend those meetings, because I think the ULURP should deal with the zoning as to how it is. And the reason that we elect all these other chairs, so they can specifically deal with those issues. And I think that it's proper that they be in the right category.
But point taken, Pat. So is anyone interested in working on the Rod? You mentioned some issues related to environment. Are you interested in doing some investigation on this issue?
Yes, with regards to what, utility infrastructure, or what in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that I will do for the committee is put together a list of upcoming developments that have been permitted already but not completed, developments that are being proposed, and developments that are as of right under the present zoning, so that we can get an idea of the potential number of units and the potential number of people and where. And then we need to start looking at questions of how that affects our infrastructure, right? So, I mean, how many more people or how many more units does it take in order to stress the infrastructure? Is there, does Con Ed have information about that? Possibly, the city also has what's known as seekers, CEQR. They have certain thresholds for the number of people in any one development before it triggers an impact. But let's do our own investigation of, what thresholds we think it would take to trigger some kind of impact for our district. Maybe we're already stressed. We're a dense district.
Okay. So full disclosure, I used to work for Con Edison, right? I used to do some load studies in my past life.
Okay.
Right? So I know basically what has to be done. And these large projects, we need to have them submitted. We need the square foot area, right? Any proposed EV charging, because EV charging, if any buildings have EV charging, that's a game changer, right? So there's a specific criteria that we need, all right? And we submit it to Con Edison, and they put it on their load flow, on their 10-year load forecast projection list. And that allows them to forecast for CapEx dollars in order to upgrade the system.
And so can you find out like what their current load forecast is for our district, and like what number of units that's based on?
So that is like a living document. Whatever I would find out today can change tomorrow. And it's based on what is submitted to them. So what it is that we just need to submit it to them, and they in turn will project what has to be upgraded, either additional transformers, substations, cables. It's an annual changing animal, I'll say. But as
Okay.
long as they have the information, they track it, and they know that they include that in their forecast, and when they're going to go for CapEx dollars.
Okay. And in terms of tracking, whether they're coming through with that or not, how do we do that?
Well, when we do it, we never share that with the public.
Okay.
Right? So we never did. I'm just going to say we never did. All right. We take the
Okay.
information, it's in-house, and we use that because we take that and we look at all of our equipment and what is it we have to do in order to upgrade it. Right. We don't know. Sometimes we can get permission to upgrade things in a certain area, and sometimes we don't. So it's a changing environment.
Okay, because I think the concern that's been expressed, by you as well as by others is if we have all of this development coming, it's going to be too much and we won't be able to sustain that. And the answer really, as you're saying, lies with Con Ed, and maybe they'll be able to accommodate it and maybe they won't. And
the biggest thing is service dates, right? So when will the project be online? Right? And that's what really drives the load forecast. When is a proposed project to be placed online? And that way they redirect their capital improvement programs based on those service dates and when things will come online.
Okay. So, we'll do the best we can. We'll look at, the number of units expecting to come. In terms of sewers, is anybody interested in working on that issue? Because I think that's a big issue. There's been some capital improvement work done already on the eastern end of the district. I think the elected officials are aware that how much development is coming. But we still should be looking at this issue. Is anybody interested in following up on that, on flooding issues, on sewers?
So Suki, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
I suggest that we have someone from the Department of Environmental Protection come in and tell us what is it that they need in order to forecast their work.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. We'll try to invite them.
Along those lines, Suki, if I may. It sounds like there's a bunch of there's information that you basically need in terms of being able to make the recommendations you need. What might be helpful is if you create a list of the questions, an interrogatory in terms of you want to know, what is the current state of the power grid? How much more can it take? What additional infrastructure will be needed for that? Same thing with sewers, and that might be something that would be directed to Department of Environmental Protection. Same thing might go to a couple of other areas, but at least if you're as a committee able to generate those questions, we might be able to take the easy route because I think the agency should be able to get that information a lot easier than you. I understand most people here have day jobs. So rather than task you with doing that, I think we should be able to get that information or at least see how much we can get right off the bat, because that probably lessens the load that the committee members will have to do on their own in terms of individual research.
I think that's a good idea, Fred. So at this point, okay, so just quickly, the other two major categories that always come up are transportation, parking and congestion, and then housing and housing affordability. And I'm prepared to reach out to the chairs of those committees, but to come up with a list of questions. But before I do, is there anyone else who's here tonight who wants to suggest any questions or work on it, volunteer to work on this? No? Okay. So I want to get to the thing that we need to vote on, which is to form a subcommittee for City of Yes for housing opportunity. It looks like Esteban's back. So we would have a quorum to vote on this. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor that we recommend the formation of a subcommittee to address the City of Yes zoning text amendment for housing opportunity at the October general board meeting. And I'm aware that it is going to coincide with the economic, City of Yes Economic Opportunity Subcommittee. But I think that committee is probably only going to be able to meet a couple of times.
So I will second your motion, Suki.
Okay, thank you. Can we do a roll call vote? Okay. So Suki Cheong, yes. John Wolfling,
Yes.
Nicola Cox,
Yes.
Pat Moses,
Abstain.
okay, and Esteban Huron.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion carries. Okay, so you know, I don't know how much longer you guys want to stay, but you know, we can continue to discuss what other questions you know, have come up that we need to investigate in order to be able to do some kind of cumulative environmental assessment of what's been going on in our district. You know, that maybe that's part of something that we start to present to our elected officials when we talk about you know, our views on, you know, land use.
Suki, when you said it passed, how many members did we had? Did we have a quorum tonight?
We had a quorum, and
Do you
for
have
you
one
abstained.
now? Because, right, so we only have 8 members, am I correct? Or 9? Which one?
We have 8 members. We had 5 present, and 4 out of the 5 voted yes.
We have 5 present?
Yes. We have myself, you, John Wolfling, Nicola Cox, and Esteban.
So I don't know, I thought we had 9, so I don't know, we only have 8 members, that's what you're saying? I mean, we only have 8?
Yeah, we have 4 board members and 4 resident committee members.
8. So we have 8 members.
Yes.
Okay. So the vote was, so only 4 of us here, right? Am I correct?
5 of us are here.
5 of us are here?
Correct.
Yes, Ms. Moses, the only members missing are Craver, Berman, and Mr. Thomas.
Esteban came back.
Who?
And Esteban is back.
See, that's what you
The
keep,
only
and that's what you keep for keeping me after 8:30 at night, because I don't even know how many members we have.
Well, there might be an opening for a 9th member. I mean, it never hurts to have more people who show up. So I'll, unless anybody wants to further discuss issues that, you know, we raised a couple already. I think I raised the question with respect to housing. I want to understand, you know, more about, you know, this gap between the number of very low income people we have and the amount of very low income housing. You know, what's kind of like who are the very low income people, and it's a relevant issue for us at ULURP because very often the affordable housing programs that are attached to rezonings cover specific demographics. So it's important for us to understand, you know, who that is. Does anybody else have any other, you know, housing related issues that they feel like we should investigate? I know there were a lot of requests to, you know, share data for our district, for other districts, anything at which we will, you know, I'll send that to Mia. Is there anything else?
Yes.
Jay, yes.
Yes, I wanted to correct something for the record. There were some comments that were made that this is only a ULURP committee and it only deals with New York City law because it's ULURP. That is giving people a misunderstanding. This is a ULURP / land use committee. Okay, so people have to not play games and say it's only ULURP. It's also a land use committee. They have to also recognize, and everybody on this committee knows, that New York State came to this committee and they gave a presentation. New York State Empire State Development gave a presentation. Do you know why they gave a presentation to the land use committee? They gave it because you guys were relevant and had jurisdiction on land use issues. And after they gave it, what they were looking for was comments. And there was a 30-day comment period. This community board chose not to comment on the land use issues from Vital Brooklyn. Okay, it doesn't matter that it doesn't go to the city council. New York State Empire State Development, the directors are going to vote on the general project plan, and they're going to listen to individual people in the comment period. They're also going to listen to the community board. That's how this community board messed up. They didn't give any comment periods, and New York State wanted to hear it. New York State probably sent out something out to the community board chair. So Fred had to have it. Fred had to have notice of it. Why? Why did they come here? Because they're looking for a comment from the community board. And this committee, if you go to whitepages.com, that's whitepages.com, for $5 a month, you'll find out where everybody lives. And I can tell you confidently, this community board has a land use committee, okay, that decides the issues of the neighborhood next door. And that is wrong. That's disenfranchisement. The committee must be diverse. It is a TRIE neighborhood. East Flatbush is a TRIE neighborhood. It's predominantly Black. It's low income, and you're disenfranchising people. And Pat Moses shut me down on Vital Brooklyn over and over again. When I wanted to talk about it, she says, we're not talking about it here. It's a total misunderstanding that New York State issues, like how tall is the building? Is it 10 stories? The land use effects. You had to give comments for the New York State Empire State Development. And this community board didn't give comments. And this community board, the makeup is one neighborhood screwing another. And I guarantee you, if there was 1,000 homeless that were right next door to Pat Moses's house, which in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, it would be an issue. The reason why you guys aren't talking about it is because nobody's in East Flatbush, okay? It's not the community board has to be diverse, it's the committee. Because when the committee is diverse, then people start speaking up. You get one person, you get two person, they make a motion, and they say it's ridiculous. There's an Empire EIS statement going on at 681 Clarkson. What do you guys have to say on it? Are you guys going to comment on it? They came here. It was 10-story buildings in the presentation. The EIS says it's 150 feet tall, 15 stories. You got to analyze the cumulative impacts, and you have to admit to everybody that you guys are shutting people down. You're not doing your job. You're playing a game, and you're not allowing this committee to be diverse so that the land use effects
Jay,
can be there. Okay.
Jay,
And I'll end with one thing, just one thing,
Jay,
just 5 seconds, 5 seconds. Okay. 975 Nostrand Avenue is not a ULURP issue, but you guys hear about it and you talk about it. Nothing is stopping you guys from telling about the land use effects, okay? Whitepages.com, you could see everybody, where everybody lives. It's in the other side of town. Prospect Lefferts Gardens screws East Flatbush every day of the week.
okay. So I just want to say that our community board staff, Dante, did inform all of the board members, some of whom are from East Flatbush, about the public hearings for these developments. And for one of them, for the 891 Rutland Road, I was actually the sole person to attend that public hearing, despite the fact that I don't live in that neighborhood. But I do think that, we're responsible for finding out about what's going on. I do think the community, and I did ask Mr. Sorid, to bring community to comment on the issue, which they did. Their comments are all recorded in the minutes of the ULURP meetings, as well as your comments, Jay. All of your comments on the issue are recorded. But, unfortunately, if you choose to use your comment time to discuss what the board is doing, as opposed to discussing what is in the EIS or what the issues are, we cannot make a comment on the EIS. We need comments from the community on the EIS. I don't the state is not going to hear comments on the committee. The state is going to hear comments on the EIS. So if, you want to comment on it, you need to comment on the issue.
The land
So
use committee makes the
that's all I
comments.
have to
It's the
say.
land use committee. The land use committee makes the comments.
Mia,
You guys have
can
to do
you-
it, and you haven't.
Mrs. Sword. Suki, are you calling additional participants to comment?
Do we have any other hands raised?
There are a few hands raised. It's past the 9 o'clock hour, so we're going to set a limit of a minute each at this point, just so that everyone has a chance to
Okay, that's
ask
a good
and
idea.
response be
Okay, we'll
provided.
take Miss Moses and then Mr. Zhang.
I didn't really want to make a comment because I'm a stickler with time, but I just want to respond to Jay, and I have to, because at the end of the day, I grew up in this community for over 40 some odd years. And the second of all, when he makes comments, we did take this issue on a year and a half ago, and we have people that come in. And the second of all, you don't represent the Black community. So you don't tell me, and this is a personal thing for me, you don't tell me what goes on in our community, and you don't even live here. Your behind lives in Staten Island, so shut up. Good night.
I'm from Long Island, and it's so bad that I
You
have
don't
to
live in
represent the
Brooklyn,
Black
so
community.
shut up.
This is so
You don't have to
inappropriate.
talk like that.
Order.
Miss Suki, I just feel very uncomfortable. I mean, this is a community board meeting, and we all should be able to speak as grown-ups. When one person is attacking the other, I just feel very uncomfortable. I mean, regardless of if anyone agrees with Mr. Sorid or not, I mean, why do we have to take it there when we're screaming at him, telling him to shut up? That just doesn't make sense.
Because he can't disrespect me, that's why. You got it?
Mia,
Mia, your audio. Somebody. Your audio is buzzing. Mia, your audio is buzzing.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Zhang, thank you for your comment. Fred, you have your
No,
hand.
that wasn't my comment, Miss Suki.
Okay.
But what I was pretty much saying is you guys have pretty much been saying that you've had meetings a year ago, so on and so forth, and no one presented themselves. And that's respectable answer. So, but my question for you is now, today, present. Is it too late to voice discontent? Is it too late to voice objection? And if it's not too late, why does it matter if we weren't present a year ago?
Okay, so, all right. There is a process and a timeline that the state has for these developments. This is something I found out because, I've had state 421A developments in my neighborhood, big ones. So there is a timeline under which they raise money, and there's a general project plan hearing and so on. The general project plan hearing for some of the Vital Brooklyn developments is over. And my understanding is they're starting to do demolition and break ground on those. So it's going to be pretty difficult to, the later it gets in the process, the more difficult it gets to influence. That said, you have to talk to your assembly person. At the town hall meeting, which I was at, my understanding is he said he would do his best to influence and shape the process. But I think on Kingsborough Psych, they have not held the general project plan hearing yet. We will let you know when it's announced. All I can say is come to the hearings, speak your mind. if you choose to come to ULURP to raise these issues, as I said, I would like to take a comprehensive look at some of the environmental effects of development in the district. So I think that this is important. And so whatever the issues are that you're concerned that this development may raise, this is the appropriate place to raise them. And we can try and put those issues before the elected officials. But to answer your question, there is a timeline. I don't want to say like exactly what the cutoff is. I think that you should attend the town hall meeting with Assemblymember Cunningham.
So I'm sorry. I know you got to move on. So I don't know if what your answer is. Is it too late or is it not too late?
It's not too late to have your say.
I think showing up at the town hall meeting is the way to have your voice heard. Show up, tell Assemblymember Cunningham, what your feelings are. I'm going to be there as well. I hope to see you there.
And actually, we didn't really under committee member updates talk about the town hall meeting that happened. I noticed Rod was there. Rod, do you want to talk about like what issues were raised or what happened?
Actually, hold on, Suki. I'm gonna do one interruption, and I'm sorry to do this, but Ms. Clark has had her hand raised for a long time. She put something in the chat. I think you should give her an opportunity to talk now.
Okay. Regina, do you want to?
Thank you, John. Just to add to the list of questions and agencies to go out to MTA and public transportation on all of the projects that are going on and making sure that is taken into account as well. That's all.
Thank you, Regina. Okay, so does anyone who attended the town hall want to give a brief update about some of the issues that were raised?
So Suki, I just have just a more of an observation.
Yes.
Other than right. So we have been in touch, locally, people in the neighborhood in East Flatbush with Brian Cunningham looking for a town hall meeting, especially specifically to Vital Brooklyn. We were shocked that the shareholders who we wanted to talk to were there at the panel. Right. So we were kind of shocked about that. We've been requesting a town hall since July. And we were disappointed that hasn't occurred as of yet. And we didn't see why this last meeting could have been the town hall, and that he could have had a general town hall meeting scheduled later on. So we found out as an opportunity that was missed, and we were very disappointed. He did give a presentation on his report card where he stands and so forth in the community. But overall, there were many individuals in the neighborhood who were disappointed.
Do you want to just report to the committee? Because it did actually end up getting discussed for the majority. I actually showed up because I thought it was a general meeting, but actually the majority of the discussion did revolve around Vital Brooklyn. Do you want to discuss any of the issues that were raised?
Well, you're correct. What it was that a lot of people wanted to be there if this was to talk to the individuals that were there, the panel. We were, I'll say, we were led to believe that it's just going to be a general town hall meeting, and we were advised that no Vital Brooklyn projects will be discussed at that town hall meeting. So a lot of people didn't show up because they wanted to talk about that. And it was very disheartening. And when the feedback went back to the community, they were upset, very upset. So, it was sort of like
a bait and
switch.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And I can't speak to, what the assembly member did or didn't do, but nevertheless, there was like over an hour of discussion about Vital Brooklyn. Do you want to give the committee an update about the issues that were raised and the answers that were given? Because that's the only way that this gets into our minutes. And this is the only way that, if the issues are not discussed at this committee cannot, have an opinion.
Well, some of the issues that were raised at the meeting was basically, is this an open and shut case? In other words, do we have the opportunity to comment? All right, and that was one of the things. I mean, a lot of people were talking during the meeting as well, and that was a huge concern.
I felt like I heard a lot of people talking about traffic issues, like traffic concerns.
Well, we that's been an ongoing issue since
Right.
July, and you're right. I mean, traffic concerns are there. There's discussions about most of the people that will move into this project. They won't have vehicles, but by good old-fashioned boots on the ground, I've found out that you have 13 cars that are owned by the individuals in the existing homeless shelters, and 47 scooters. Okay, and now the 47 scooters are chained to the fence, and where they're going to be, because now the new project, there isn't a fence. So they're going to be strewn all over the place. I really don't have that much to say, because it was very disheartening, and I expected something different. And I even phrased my questions different based on a certain community items that people wanted me to follow up on this meeting. So that's basically all I have to say.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So let's see who's next. John Wolfling.
Let Mr. Zhang go first.
Okay.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. Mrs. Suki, I'd like to humbly and respectfully disagree with you as far as the Vital Brooklyn being discussed at the town hall meeting. It was spoken about, yes, I do agree, but a lot of the attendees of that meeting were completely blindsided. Whenever there's a meeting, people like to prepare for a meeting. The community was not given an opportunity to prepare because we did not know that the Vital Brooklyn stakeholders would be present. That's one. And the second thing, we were repeatedly instructed by Brian Cunningham himself to not get into details about the Vital Brooklyn project, because they would have a separate meeting specifically for the Vital Brooklyn. So to assert that we had an opportunity to address the Vital Brooklyn meeting at the town hall meeting is simply inaccurate. We didn't really get to do so to our heart's desires, man.
Okay. No, I hear you. Let's see who's next. John,
Okay.
and then Fred.
So I'm just going to give like a quick summary of some of the things that I heard at that town hall meeting. And, I apologize in advance if I put some of these in more positive terms. There was definitely discussion about the Winthrop Street traffic. My idea was, maybe we should widen, like in that part of Winthrop Street, they should take a little bit of the site and give it to the street widening, and maybe make the traffic a little less congested there. They do have a home ownership program that's part of their development, which, when you want to talk about building generational wealth, that is an economic mechanism. So I think them having that is a positive thing. They also mentioned the amount of open space that's going to be available. I think it's like 2 acres of the 7 acres that's going to be open space, which is a great community benefit. The 300 beds that are going to go in, the 300 shelter beds that are going in, they're replacement beds. It's 2 buildings that are going to be replaced. Those existing buildings are in really bad shape. So as part of this project, and I'm not working on this project, I know the developer, I'm not working on this Kingsborough Psych site. They are going to be providing like housing, dignified housing for these 300 bedded, the individuals that are going to stay in those 300 beds. There was also description, I think a good description of supportive housing. This is one of the things that I learned more about. I think we all hear supportive housing and we have a concept of it and what it means. I think to hear Breaking Ground describe their programs and the safety net that they provide to these people that are at risk is a really helpful thing to hear. So I really encourage everyone to show up. I know I'm painting this in a very positive light, but I think you can hear it for yourself. And I think that's the opportunity for you to voice your concerns. I do think it was confusing. I showed up thinking it was the town hall to talk about Vital. But it wasn't. That's a future event. So I must have misheard at our general meeting from Assemblymember Cunningham.
Okay, thank you. Fred and then Regina.
Sure, I'll try and keep this very brief. I know that we're long in the hour. First of all, just a couple of quick comments. I just wanted to pop in as the board of the chair. Just one, thank everyone on the committee who come on to help tackle some of these issues and to hopefully get clarity on a lot of the issues around land use and zoning in the district. Definitely one of the hot issues in Brooklyn, definitely a hot issue here, and I thank you in advance for that work. I did want to also thank all of the residents who did come out tonight in terms of providing the feedback that's necessary for us to kind of understand what the issues are. I think that's what's important, and I think that's the success we have here tonight. That's what it's all about in terms of the committee. The committee is basically the engine of the board, but this is that kind of feedback that we need to understand the issues, to understand the questions we need to ask, and understand who do we need to bring into conversations. I want to say off the bat, not all the conversations are CB9 conversations, but that doesn't mean we can't facilitate or bring in other people or the relevant parties into the conversation in terms of addressing what the community issues and concerns are. So keep this up. We meet on a monthly basis. You have the opportunity to have this dialogue much more fully. I know some of you have been to the board meetings, and that's not really opportunity because we have 10 committees and we have a set amount of business we have to get in a set amount of time. But here we can discuss those issues much more fully. Per a vote that we actually took at the borough at our board meeting, we did send a letter to the governor's office saying that yes, there are serious concerns about the lack of communication in terms of what this project is. So we are that has been sent off to the governor's office, and we are working with our elected officials to see at what point in the conversation we are and what we can do to try and make sure that voices are heard with respect to that. Going back to the idea of making sure community is here. As a board, we don't know what we don't know, which is the reason why we need for these voices to come and let us know what the issues are on the ground. If there are service issues, so in other words, I know I heard a number of complaints about, they were saying there were homeless people who were doing things in terms of urinating on private property or other quality of life issues. Those are the kinds of things we need for you to report. One, make sure you are letting 911 or 311 know what's going on. And then the second piece of that is please make sure you are letting our district office team know, because that's how we're able to track the severity of an issue. Is it one complaint, 2 complaints, or 50 of them? Because this is the information we take back to the relevant agencies to make sure that we're getting the appropriate response in the district. So I just wanted to say those quick hits very quickly. And I guess just one last thing, just to kind of give people an understanding of how the board works. I understand that a lot of people want to get on committees. A lot of people, ULURP land use is always one of the more popular ones every year. I get a whole bunch of people who want to be on this. And there have been times in the board's history, yes, we've had larger committees, but one of the things we need to be clear, logistically, that becomes very unwieldy as well. So the committee, there are choices that we've had to make in terms of, making sure that there's a certain size, because we want to make sure that we're able to make quorum, which would have been a problem today. If we were a little bit bigger, we wouldn't have had quorum today. So the idea being, it's a wieldy number. We try our best to try and accommodate needs and requests, but at the same time, part of my responsibility as chair is to put a winning team on the field. And I feel very confident in terms of the expertise and experience of those members who are on the board. The chair has been here for a minute, both as a resident member and as a board member, and is quite capable of dealing with all these issues. And the other members of the committee are quite experienced in these issues in terms of the board. But that doesn't mean your voices are negated. Again, this is the time for us to hear from you, because that helps us in terms of understanding what the issues are. I just want to finish with that. Again, thanks to everyone for coming this evening. I'm going to have to take leave shortly, but absolutely please feel free to communicate with the committee if there's any concerns, and I can be reached directly through the board office as well if there's any issues that need to be addressed. And again, Suki and committee, please, thank you very much for everything you've done and all the great work I know is going to come from the committee.
Thank you so much, Fred. Okay, who's next? Regina?
Be quick again. So safety is really my primary concern with the particularly the Vital Brooklyn. Me personally, I've seen a halfway house go up behind my house, the Rutland Road project, Utica Avenue, that little hotel thing, what you see on Clarkson. I avoid Albany Avenue and at certain hours between right between Clarkson and Winthrop. All of these different things like directly impact our area and safety. For me, there's been armed robberies as of late. Actually, I would say increasing, it feels like. People are reporting them. I already said the halfway house. Again, with that halfway house, when they developed that, it's rather large. Drainage, so this construction that actually caused more flooding. We never had flooding, but in the back alleyway, now we have that. I could say from looking at other states, there's rules and regulations if you're going to start to change certain structures to make sure drainage is there, and that's to the whoever's doing the development, property owner, whatever. But yeah, safety is my number one concern for me. As I said, I walk a lot, and just seeing what's been happening to community of all backgrounds is concerning. To add that level of supportive housing and not take into account what is already here is very concerning. Like, I'm a believer in having a place for everyone, but really making sure what's going on in this specific region, that it's taken into account what we already have. So safety is my number one concern. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to mention as well that we're going into our district budget process, which is where we make requests for capital and expense budget items. And public safety is definitely something that, that should go up there. I think it's, it's certainly been a concern in my area of the district as well. I definitely, hear you. I feel like there's definitely been an uptick in the
Ms.
number.
Clark, if I could also ask, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
I'm so sorry. Very quickly, Ms. Clark, thank you for all those comments. If I could ask if you could send those into the district office as well. Some of those we might be able to treat as service complaints. So if there's certain things happening, certain issues we can address with the local precinct, or if it's sanitation, or if it's DEP, we can address those directly. And we see where, we go from there. If it's something larger in terms of, with other projects coming in, we see how those get handled.
So how best to present that to make sure it's clear? Because there's different neighbors that have different things. We've all been impacted a little bit differently. I like I said, I walk around certain areas just to be safe. So what's the best way to communicate that to you?
An email is great. Now, are there a number of neighbors who have similar issues?
Yeah, it's a variety of neighbors. Myself is separate, but then other people have had issues. So I was listing off things that we've all.
Okay, is it a block association or is it an organized group?
Group of regular neighbors that are concerned about these developments. So.
Okay. Even if you start off with the ones you've identified, that's fine, because we can probably expand, or there'll probably be some similarities, but we can talk about how we can engage further on that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, Suki, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to mention that when I was at the town hall, this issue, I feel like this issue definitely came up. And, like John said, the organization that is going to be running the homeless shelter, they painted a very positive picture of what they can do for some of these individuals, like, some of whom, some of them are normal people, but some of them are disturbed or they have, some issues. And, it's definitely like a very hopeful thing to think that they could, benefit from stable housing and from services. But one of the concerns that was raised by someone who attended the town hall, which is something that we have also heard from DHS in connection with the other shelter in our district on Parkside Court, is that people in homeless shelters are not required to accept services that are offered. And so, I feel like that's something of an issue when we talk about supportive housing and the supportive housing model. I just wanted to make that comment. Okay, I see, who's Chelly?
So it's Michelle. Good evening.
Michelle. Okay,
Michelle. Yes.
Michelle.
How is it? Hello, good evening. I just wanted to touch base on a few of the things I've been hearing. For one thing, again, touching on Mr. Wolfling, mentioned how innovative this project is, and I keep hearing how innovative it is. And I just feel like they just totally did not take into account what's already happening in the neighborhood. The other day I came home from the supermarket and two individuals were literally crushing marijuana buds on my stoop and smoking. And congestion, without taking into account how much the safety is going to be impacted by the residents who have been living there for generations. This is generations of residents who've been comfortably living in their neighborhoods, and we are literally being pushed to the side. Now, I just can't see how we have this 2 acres of open land and it's going to be, palm trees and roses, and there's going to be no increased, there's no increased safety. I see no additional policing going on. I see added homeless people camping around. And these are the things that we are faced with daily. And yet I keep hearing the highlight of how much housekeeping and how beautiful the premises is going to be. One of our neighbors shared with us the other day, there was a young boy in the neighborhood walking around with an aluminum bat to protect himself. From the people that are wandering and toggling our streets and going to and from the hospital to the city streets. I don't know how loud we need to shout it. I don't know if we need to write it in the sky for someone to actually consider how it is that we are feeling, but we are just not being taken seriously. We're having constant discussions about the same thing, and I'm just not seeing any action. What about, I have neighbors who they don't dispose of their garbage properly. And every day, every single week, they collect the garbage and there's just bags and bags toppling over each other. All of us have been notified about how the sanitation wants us to start composting. And when you report to these agencies, the Department of Sanitation just goes by and kind of gives them a ticket and moves about their business. What are the escalation tactics being put in place so that, people are going to be forced to maintain our neighborhood? These are my comments, and I just, it's just really frustrating to keep having the conversations, and when you guys feel like you're not seeing enough people. 100,000 people may not be coming out to the meeting, but there's certainly a good strong 20, 25 of us, 30 of us who are consistently coming out and voicing the concerns, and we're representing everybody in the neighborhood, and believe me, they have these same sentiments. So if you can't see all 100,000 of them, at least listen to the few voices that we are here. This is what everyone is experiencing.
And I have the video with the bat. I have the video with the bat if anyone wants to see.
Thank you, Michelle, for your comment. And, you're not alone. I think I'm so glad that you guys are attending board meetings now, because if you've attended board meetings over the past 2 years, these are concerns that are being expressed by people throughout the district, about sanitation, about safety, about congestion. And, we're absolutely, we're with you on that. And, the louder we speak as one district on these issues, and hopefully together with other adjoining districts as well, the more likely it is our elected officials are going to hear us, that we need a different model of development. That's all I can say. Renee, and then Felice, and then we have to ask Mia how long she wants to stay.
Yes, I've made a repeated request to 311. I was curious. Mr. Baptiste mentioned that I should also report some of these things at community board. So if I report to 311, the community board doesn't know about it. Should I go through the community board to be more effective? Mr. Baptiste?
Well, actually, Mia, can you? Well, listen, I'll say it. Let me take a stab at it. Mia will get me if I run off the rails.
Okay.
311 is a great way to track it in terms of that's the citywide mechanism for tracking complaints. Now, one of the things the city does is sometimes we've noticed that they close these complaints very quickly in terms of, oh yeah, we received them, and they close them.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean anything was done, but they close them. The one, this is the plug for the district office. When they get these things, when they get to numbers, they are good in terms of they're able to contact the agency directly about what did you do? And we can put that, we can make those inquiries in terms of what did you do? What is the plan? How are you addressing these things? And then the other piece is the district manager and the office team as well. We're trying to make sure we understand the volume of the numbers. Is it one time? Is it 2 times? Is it 50 times? Because if it's 50 times, then there are larger conversations and perhaps higher that you have to go up in terms of getting these things done. But that's where we want to go from. And this is why it's helpful for us to know. Because I mean, I apologize if you had to call 311, but that's a black hole to us. We don't necessarily see that. So that's why it's important. Now, that's why I always advocate, make the 311 because it logs the complaint, let the community board, because then they can follow those as well on the district level.
Right. So what I've been doing with 311 is not necessarily calling, but going on the internet and logging my complaint through there.
Right.
I also wanted to bolster something that one of the young ladies that was saying, is that there's a lot of things going on in our community that is not necessarily making 311. Quality of life issues, some of the homeless people defecating in some of my neighbors' backyard. Just last night, someone's vehicle got broken into. I helped them cut trees down so their camera could better see what's going on. And thank you. I know that I can use a community board to also report some of these instances of quality of life issue, because there's a vehicle with a homeless guy that's parked by Kingsbrook that it used to be down by our private common driveway, but now he's actually has it by the hospital, and it's been there over a year. All right.
And too often what happens is we walk by the car.
Yeah.
We shake a fist at it, but we walk by the car. But this is the conversations we want to have. So now we can see what has to happen with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Felice? Felice?
Yes. I just want to, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes,
good.
we can.
I just wanted to comment on the concerns of safety. Officer or Sergeant Beretta should be coming in on the safety committee, and we have it. And in addition, October 19th at MS 61 School, 400 Empire Boulevard, which is next to the 71st Precinct, we're having a general meeting for the community there to express your concerns and what we can do to resolve these problems. Okay, sounds very serious, and I'm feeling the impact, and we have to do something about this. You're absolutely right. Okay, so you have the safety committee, Sergeant Beretta will be there, and you have the general meeting for the community, which will be at the school at MS 61, 400 Empire Boulevard. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Zhang?
Yes, Mr. Baptiste, I just want to let you know that I was very encouraged by the statement you made about hearing the community out, and that's the way you know how to address the proper agency, a proper target, to voice the concerns of the community. It makes me feel like I legitimately have a voice along with the other community. But so therefore, I must ask you, this Vital Brooklyn has been a very hot topic in my immediate area. Have you been hearing through any community board or any other meetings of any of the residents that was for this project?
I can't say that I have heard for or I've heard some against. I can't tell you I've heard for, but then again, people don't necessarily show up to the meeting, so I don't hear all those voices. I know that it's been a conversation we've had here on a number, and we've made the decision where it wasn't, because of the state nexus, it wasn't really for us, but we've done what we can on the board level to try and at least pass the word along in that respect. We've definitely had conversations with Assemblymember Cunningham. So he's making movement on that one in terms of trying to see about doing that. And as well as I think we made we did pass the resolution in terms of getting the state to say, listen, you know what, whatever they've done, whatever the communication plan is, did not work, and they need to re-engage the community in that sense. So we're hoping that that's going to, bear some fruit in terms of, I can't say it resets deadlines or anything, But I think at the very least, the state needs to understand, one, that there is some, a lot of, listen, there's a lot of unreadiness with what's going on. And there's definitely going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered in terms of, I think what people have said, okay, if you're going to increase the density of homeless people there, what are you doing in terms of services? How are you preserving quality of life? What resources do you put in the community to make sure that everybody's okay?
Okay, so just to be clear, although you said that the whole community doesn't show up to these certain meetings, regardless, the voices that you have heard have all uniformly been against. So you never heard anyone for this project, just to be clear.
I don't want to oversimplify that. I don't want to oversimplify that.
Fred,
I've never heard somebody. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
I can actually answer that. And actually, so I can answer that. This was something that Assemblymember Cunningham explained at the town hall meeting, and I can confirm that as well, that this project, actually, we started talking about this several years ago, maybe like around 2016. And this was started by the former Assembly member Diana Richardson. She held a series of meetings that she called Civic Minded. They were on a Saturday at MS 61. They were very well attended by people from throughout the community. I can't speak to who exactly was invited, but I always saw a ton of people there. And at that time, I think people were very enthusiastic about the project because it was viewed as an opportunity to do the kind of development that the community wanted in the way that the community wanted. I think that there was a lot of desire for true affordable housing. And Diana talked to the community and she said, what AMI levels do you want, and this and that. And people wanted housing for low and moderate income people. And then we talked about like supermarkets and other things that people wanted. And I think I threw in that like SUNY downstate should have a STEM high school, but that didn't make it into the final recommendations. And she said that she promised us that it was going to be respectful to the context of the community. And that was what we heard. And, when it was sort of first announced, it seemed like, okay, the buildings were going to be like so and like so. And then she resigned, as you know. And by the way, is Brian Cunningham your Assembly member? Are you do you live in his district?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So then I think Assemblymember Cunningham took over, and the final RFPs for the project started to come out. And I think that people were taken aback that it was going to be supportive housing, because that wasn't really discussed at the initial Vital Brooklyn meetings. I think the person from Breaking Ground was saying at the town hall meeting that I attended, she said, yes, there was a stated desire for low-income housing for seniors. And she said, this is going to be low-income housing for seniors, to the extent that we're attempting to provide permanent housing, state-of-the-art housing for the homeless. And a lot of long-term homeless are over 50, they're generally over 50, and we expect them to age in place. They're not going anywhere. So this is low income housing for seniors. So I think that, that's how that possibly was interpreted.
I'm sorry. So just to be clear, if someone is 30 years old and homeless and they expect them to age into 80, they consider that homeless housing for seniors?
What she was saying is that I guess either looking at the data from the city or their experience or whatever, that actually most of the homeless clients that they have, they already are older. They are older. They're over 50. That's all I can say, like that's what she said during the meeting. So
okay, because 50 is not a senior.
Again, I would, urge you to attend either our housing committee meeting or the health and social services meetings. They might be able to better discuss the nature of some of the programs, because these are all subsidized. They require subsidy. Low income housing requires significant subsidy from the state, and as I was saying earlier, each subsidy program has a target demographic. So this, this is part of why I went through all of the informational stuff earlier, because we kind of need to understand like where this is coming from.
So, okay, because pretty much what I gathered from what you just told me is that meetings took place, you had the full scope of the change they did. So early that it's late to voice our opposition to this project. Baptistes are now telling me that you got a project, Vital Brooklyn project.
I'm sorry, it broke up a little bit. I didn't hear some of that. What was that last part?
I'm sorry. The last part I said that you guys have not confirmed that you've heard heard any of the residents that's in favor of this Vital Brooklyn project.
No,
Yeah. Let me, if I could take a stab, and I want to correct myself a little bit, because I think Suki gave some very, very good context to how this whole conversation started. In terms of, there were community meetings in terms of some of the goals of things we would like to see if they
with
were
misinformation.
I'm sorry?
With misinformation, because what Ms. Suki said was that they had told them something but left out a key component about the homeless shelters, etc. That's what.
Well, here's the thing. The one thing I want to say is that I think that some of the goals that were originally part of the Vital Brooklyn project were things that were very much agreed in terms of, no, we want to make sure that if there's housing for seniors, affordable housing pieces, places where people could be supported in different populations that are normally not able to get any. Things that I think we're kind of in agreement with. Now, this is why I want to be careful. I'm understanding that there might have been some things that are not in the scope that was originally discussed. And I'm not sure what is the outgrowth on this one. And I want to be very careful. I'm not saying that it's totally out of scope. I'm not sure if things have morphed in that conversation. But what I will say is, I think what we're doing now that's important is we are re-engaging, or we're trying to get them to re-engage in terms of having that conversation. And it's important that we understand the pain points that we're having in the community, so we can talk about what that looks like and how do we address it.
You are the man.
I'll add one more thing, which is the Equitable Development Data Explorer that Nicola took us through. I encourage you all to look at it. One of the pieces of data on that is the number of individuals in DHS shelters who gave that community district as their last known address. And this is an important piece of information for us to know about our district, about other districts, because there was quite a lot of discussion at the town hall meeting about fair share, that we feel oversaturated. And, I hear that definitely. So in that EDD, you can take a look at it. I think it says the number of such individuals in our district. I think they said it was like 434. I think one of the questions I would like answered is, what exactly does that mean? Does that reflect the number of shelter beds that are currently in our community, or does it reflect the number of people in the city shelter system as a whole who, when they had a home, lived in our community? And therefore, I've definitely, seen a lot of discussions that at the city level, people are saying that the way that number of beds should be assigned to each district is how many people were last known to have an address in your community. So you're kind of like responsible for them, right? And is that a fair way to do things? Is that fair share? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You know, the city has right now 113,000 people in shelter, and there are 59 community districts. Is it fair or unfair if we have 300 or 500 or 600 people in shelter in our district? I don't know. I mean, you know, to anybody that gets a homeless shelter near them, it's completely unfair and highly concerning. I you know, completely share those concerns. But you know, I would just urge you to keep in mind how the city is looking at these things. And you know, actually one piece that I didn't really get to talk about in addition to the district needs is reviewing, you know, what the city and what the borough president, what the larger community is saying about what their needs are, what they expect from all districts. And so, you know, at this point it's 10 o'clock. I don't think we can do that. We'll have to do that next time. But that's, you know, something to keep in mind as we do our land use planning. There's what we say our needs are and our opinions and preferences are, which are really important, but also for us to be aware of what the city is saying and, you know, what's being said at the borough level. But I'll just throw out there, you know, because I think maybe it's a hopeful thing that as part of City of Yes, the mayor is saying that the target goal for the number of overall new units, not just supportive housing, but overall units that they want to build is 100,000 over the next 15. And that sounds like a tremendous amount, but keep in mind, we have 59 community districts, 5 boroughs, right? You guys saw, you know, the analysis of the number of units that was already built in our district. It's 3,500. The other districts are similarly doing thousands of units. Some are doing tens of thousands. You know, there are a couple of districts that have done like little to nothing, but you know, most districts have done thousands of units. You know, so maybe a conversation that we want to start having is what does 100,000 units over 59 community districts over 15 years look like? Is that, you know, something that we can plan for? What do we have to say about it? So
that is, I've had my hand raised for a while, so I'm just going to jump in on that.
Yeah.
And there's a program that they call UAP, which is I forget what it stands for, but basically they're taking those units and they're spreading them throughout the entire city. So it's not like any one area is going to have to like get a rezoning and have you know, an outsized number of units at one site. It's really intended to be distributed throughout the entire city.
And and so that's a very good question. If that is really the meaning of fair share, that all of your neighborhoods, you know, all of your neighborhoods are R6, there's some R7 patches, R5, if all of your neighborhoods should have to incur more development. That means on your block, you know, that means possibly more houses being demolished on your block in order to build more housing.
But this
Possibly
UAP program,
John, let me finish. Possibly some of it supportive housing, because UAP will include an affordable component for all groups, including supportive housing. So, you know, that is something to think about, whether that is the meaning of fair share, right? Or is the meaning of fair share that every district should do their part? But, you know, or is the meaning of fair share that every district should take the number of homeless shelter beds that, you know, reflect whoever was homeless that came from your district? You know, is it an equal number for every district? You know, what is the meaning of fair share, right? And is that an important principle, right? You know, are there other concerns that we need to pay attention to, right? So this is what, you know, this is kind of the conversation that I think that we need to have. You know, what does the city expect from us? And, you know, what do we want to see? Do we want to see houses knocked down on every block? you know, because that's a possible way of doing fair share.
Suki, I think
What
the
is the
things you're
meeting?
bringing up, are really for the Housing Opportunity Subcommittee. Can I make a motion to adjourn? Is that within my power as a committee member?
Well, let's see if
Yeah,
there's
you could do
anybody else
that.
who wants to comment. Okay, so Zhang and Jay still have their hands raised. Zhang, were you finished with your comment?
No, to close out, just one thing I want to bring to your attention, Ms. Suki. You sat down and said whether things are fair or not, right? It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. But one thing I do know, ma'am, is in the spirit of fairness, if every resident within the community, since you guys are the voice of the community and the only voices you're hearing is opposition, regardless of fair or not fair, I feel that you guys have a duty to voice how every resident you hear, like what you hear every resident saying. That's one. And I understand things are a procedure. Although Miss Pat said that Jay Sora doesn't represent the Black community, I feel that only the opposite is true, because he has been bombing us with information after information to educate us, and there's procedures that must be followed, and these developers aren't following these procedures. There's no environmental impact study to show how they're going to address issues such as parking. So what makes them above procedures? And
No, I
also,
think
who's going to
that's,
hold them accountable?
I think that those are good points. And Mia, can I ask that if and when an EIS is issued or a scoping meeting for the EIS, that the district office sends that notice to us?
Of course, will do.
Okay, thank you. And you know, if all of you are on CB9's distribution list, you should get it too. Okay, I'm going to take Jay, and then we have to close.
Okay, I just wanted to mention for Vital Brooklyn, what I would ask Suki, if we can get a residential beds analysis, not just the Department of Homeless Services beds, but some sort of social service beds analysis, like they did in the 1998 Fair Share, that it's NYC Giuliani. You look it up, it gets residential beds by the district, because that's the issue. It's also the supportive housing beds. Let me give you an example. There's 364 beds right now at 681 Clarkson. You're going to add on approximately 400 supportive housing beds. That's 764. Across the street from that, you got Canva on the other side of Albany. That's around 300, at least 330 beds from back in 2016, supportive housing from the Office of Mental Health. That's around over 1,000 there. So the issue is, how much are they bringing in terms of percentage? Vital Brooklyn is 50% supportive housing. Clarkson Avenue, Clarkson Estates by New York Avenue, the Campbell one, that's 50%. When you take a look at 681 Clarkson, when you include the homeless beds, it's 50%. When you take a look at Kingsbrook Estates, that's over at Kingsbrook Jewish, that's 50%. It's the percentage that people are concerned about. The New York City City Council says that 15% of all the new affordable housing, if it's affordable housing, if it's 40 units or more, 15% of them have to go for the homeless. 40 units or more, New York City law, if it's 40 units or more, it goes for the homeless. So in the higher R6 and R7 areas, that's where you're going to put in more of the homeless, because that's where you're going to get the 40 units. That's why Utica Avenue is going to have a tremendous amount. That's why the areas which are zoned more are going to have a lot, and the downzoned areas aren't. So I would ask for a residential beds analysis, not just the homeless, taking a look at the social service beds in the district and by census tract area, because in East Flatbush, they're going to get more. And if you had 2 people on this committee, we could make motions and bring that to the board. We need geographic diversity on the land use committee. Thank you.
So that's something we can investigate, Jay. You know, just just keep in mind, like I said, there's now 113,000 people in shelter in the city. And,
these
you
are
know,
families and these are children.
well, as
Not
I
all of
said,
them, but
even
this
as I
is
said,
not, I don't think we should demonize this.
John, please don't interrupt me. Let me finish what I was saying. There are 113,000 people in shelter in the city. There are 59 community districts. You know, I don't think that we have thousands of homeless shelter beds. So yes, we can investigate how many beds we have, but just think about the direction that this conversation may be going. That's all I ask. Okay, so I think we have to close. It's 10:15. Mia has been amazing to keep going for this long. And so yeah, motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. So thank you all for staying so late. I know these discussions get heated, but you know, we need to have it because we need to get on the same page as a district so that we can stand together. And you know, that's what we're going to do. So thank you all. Thank you all for coming and for sharing your concerns and your thoughts. Okay. Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night. All.
Good night. Good night, everyone. God bless.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
For
Good
coming
night.
out.
Good night. Thank you. Good night,
God
John
bless.
Take
Floyd.
care.
Good night.